Good morning and welcome to the Committee of the Whole, September the 9th, 2025. It is 8:29 and the chair calls this meeting to order. Mayor McKay, can I have you read the land acknowledgement?
Let's take our land acknowledgement.
Sorry.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. First meeting back, eh? I would like to acknowledge that Wolfville is situated in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, and as such ask that we conduct our business with the 7 sacred teachings in mind: truth, honesty, love, courage, respect, wisdom, and humility.
Thank you, Mayor. And moving on, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated? Councillor Palmer, can you read that please for me for the record?
Sorry. No, somebody else would do it. I haven't got it right here in front of me.
I can. I would move that the agenda be approved as circulated.
Okay, sorry, I do have it.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Elliott, thank you. Are there any changes or additions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of Committee of the Whole, July 8th?
I can do that one.
Okay,
I would move that the minutes of July 8th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting be approved as circulated or amended.
thank you, Councillor Promoter, and a seconder.
I'll second that.
Councillor Butler, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
All right.
And that is carried. And someone to the Committee of the Whole minutes, in-camera minutes, July the 8th also. Councillor Butler,
The third time. I would move that the minutes of the July 8th, 2025 Committee of the Whole in-camera meeting be approved as circulated and or amended.
thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Elliott, thank you. All those in favor? All right, and that is carried also. We're moving on to number 3. If anyone around the table wishes to declare a conflict of interest, they may do so now. Seeing none, we will move on. It's rare, but we do not have any presentations today, so we're just going to keep on moving. We've got a pretty full agenda. So we're moving on to public input. First, let me read this. I just want to remind all speakers that the town conducts its business with the 7 sacred teachings in mind: truth, honesty, love, courage, respect, wisdom, and humility. Members of the public participating in public input sessions will conduct themselves in a manner that is respectful to the public, council, and staff. Should this not occur, the chair will advise them to end their questions and or comments immediately. You have up to 5 minutes to make comments and provide feedback. Comments are to be directed to the chair. If appropriate, responses to input and or questions will be responded to in a future CAO report. Any questions that relate to personnel, current or political litigation issues or planning issues for which a public hearing has already occurred but no decision has been made by council will not be answered. That being said, is there anybody wishing to speak with public input? If so, please come up and state your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Janet McLeod. I live at 24 Whidden Avenue in Wolfville. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to address council regarding my concerns about the change in the Reservoir Park being a leash-free area to one where dogs have to be on leash between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. I'm not sure the reasoning behind this change. Can anyone answer that?
As I said in the opening, we do not answer any questions will be answered in the follow-up. Thank you.
I spoke with one of the compliance officers and was told that a person or persons had been bitten. The compliance officer had no further details. I've been walking my dogs at the reservoir since I became a Wolfville resident and taxpayer 5 years ago. In all that time, I have never seen dog on person aggression. My friend here has been walking her dogs twice a day up to the reservoir since 2011 and hasn't witnessed any dog behaving aggressively towards humans. I've seen dog-on-dog aggression a few times, but that was mostly noise. No injuries to the dogs involved. In my experience, dogs on leash may be more reactive because they are protective of their owners at the other end of the leash. Also, I have met people up there with rescue dogs from Texas who keep their dogs on leash, and It's well known in the dog community. My friend runs the Nova Scotia Lost Dog Network, that these dogs aren't vetted very well before they are sent up from the Texas kill shelters, which often come from another country, land in Texas, and then are adopted up here. In the summer, after 7 p.m. is when the mosquitoes come out. And when the time changes in the fall, it will be dark by 5 p.m. and there is little lighting in the park. This was the only leash-free area in Wolfville, and there were many places where people could walk prior to the ban on trails due to the risk of fire. I understand that the issue will be revisited in December. I would like to know what evidence you have showing that a person or people were bitten and what can be done to remove the restrictions prior to December. I'd also like to bring up the bike lanes. You know, I'm a big proponent of putting a stoplight at Main and Gaspereau, and I'm not sure how much the bike lanes cost, but Highway 1 continues through the town of Wolfville, and you've got semis, 18-wheelers driving down that road, and it makes it very narrow and difficult to navigate. So I'll bring that up in further detail at a future council meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else in the gallery that wishes to speak in public input? All right, seeing none, I assume there's no one online, Laura? No, and there's no one online. Thank you. We are moving on. The first item in staff reports is intersection safety on Main Street corridor. Going to hand this over to our CEO, Glenn, to introduce this.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our first Committee of the Whole meeting of the fall. So as our presenters get to the desk, I'll just give a brief introduction of this item. In the summer and fall of 2024, saw a notable increase in vehicle traffic on Main Street. By our traffic counts, approximately 78,000 more vehicles came through Main Street than the previous year. We expect this increase was largely driven by construction between exits 10 and 11 on Highway 101. However, there is still an increasing number of vehicles on Main Street each year. Shortly after being elected in October of 2024, Council shared with staff the importance of addressing congestion and intersection challenges on Main Street. This was a feature of discussions in the development of our ops plan and at other points throughout our conversations. In assessing the challenges as we understood them, it became apparent that intersections couldn't be assessed in isolation because each one affects the other. It was also apparent that Main Street is a lot of things to a lot of people who access it in different ways. People work on Main Street, live on Main Street, visit Main Street, eat on Main Street, hang out on Main Street, exercise. They get there by bike, they walk, they drive, multiple modes of transportation. Main Street is a significant contributor to Wolfville's character. It's why it's important to properly understand the perspectives and the problems and the priorities before we consider any particular actions. That's what we're here to do today. So at the presenters table are Tristan Cleveland from Happy Cities and Harrison McGrath from RV Anderson, who we have retained to give us some assistance with this particular challenge. And they're going to provide a presentation here of where we have been, where we are today, and where we'd like to go through that presentation. At the end of that presentation, we'll also have some discussion with council to make sure that some of the assumptions, perspectives, and thoughts that we've captured here are properly calibrated. So in its simplest form, what we hope to do today is review our existing work, what we're hoping to do through this work, is review our existing work, develop a set of options to address our challenges, engage with stakeholders on priorities, and then determine with council the best options for moving forward on what needs to occur on Main Street. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tristan to walk us through our presentation.
Thank you. So this work, as was mentioned, is a collaboration between Wolfville, Happy Cities, and Harrison, who's a transportation engineer with RVA. There's a other set of work that's happening at the same time on local streets and intersections throughout Wolfville off Main Street, which is being conducted by Mobicon, and we're collaborating closely on the two projects. So the study area for this project is really the central part of Main Street from the Harborside Main Street intersection all the way to University. So we're focusing in especially on these intersections to ask how do we make these function as well as possible. But we're also looking at the street connection, between these areas to make sure that, we're achieving other goals there, such as making them as walkable and a desirable environment as possible. There are, heavy challenges here that everyone at this table is aware of. So when we get to discussion, I want to make sure that we are articulating these challenges correctly so that we're responding to the right thing. But what we understand is that there's heavy traffic in certain peak periods. Traffic's not always a problem, but especially during harvest in the fall when students arrive. A major challenge is that often there's a steady stream of pedestrians. So classes get out, people walk across Main Street, and there's, a steady drip of every 5, 10, 15 seconds that ensures that cars can't quite get through the intersection. So you get major backup as a result. Left turns slow down traffic, especially, for example, if someone gets halfway through the intersection and then there's pedestrians on the other leg of the intersection and they get stuck there and bottle up traffic. And there's a need to, I wrote maintain, accommodate heavy traffic while also creating a great pedestrian destination. And another way to put that is that there's this tension between these two essential goals. Walking is the reason people want to visit Main Street. So walking has to remain an excellent, wonderful experience. That's the reason people want to be here. But driving will remain how many people get here. It's a regional destination. It needs to work for cars as well. So how do we accomplish those two goals?
So there's been multiple studies across various intersections on Main Street over the years. Back in 2016, WSP did a study of various intersections throughout the town. I guess the main kind of issue we're seeing with that past work was that it was mainly car focused and didn't really consider pedestrians or cyclists in very much detail. So that study had identified multiple intersection upgrades throughout the town. This visual here is Main and Gasbro, showing traffic lights going in, turning lanes going in, the removal of parking, and no real upgrades for cyclists or pedestrians. So since then, there's obviously been a big push for designing streets for all users and not just private vehicles. In 2021, there was an additional study for Main and Gasbro that just focused at that intersection. This is just a photograph of traffic data being collected. So since the car-centric approach that was taken in the past, these more up-to-date studies have really looked at all modes. So this traffic count is showing vehicles and pedestrian volumes for a full day on Main Street in Gasbro. So that's something that we'll reproduce during our study. So this is a comparison of intersection volumes. This is showing pedestrian volumes over a 15-minute period. So as we can see, there's been data collected for weekdays during the morning, afternoon peaks, Saturday peaks during the summer, during the fall, during harvest. So data is collected over multiple scenarios to compare kind of the typical weekday versus some of the peak periods we see. And with pedestrian volumes, what we're seeing in this graph is that they're pretty consistent throughout the day and throughout the time of year. So we are seeing a lot of pedestrians at this intersection in particular.
And we should mention this was in 2021. So
yes, yeah.
During the pandemic, one reason why we're doing this work now is that may be different now.
And this is a similar data set, but for vehicles. So as you can see, compared to the pedestrian volumes, the vehicle volumes during different days of the week and different periods of the year actually have a fair amount of variation. So we'll be updating this data again with new data post-COVID, where we've seen traffic volumes kind of normalize a bit. And we'll be kind of reviewing the just what we're seeing for a distribution of pedestrian and traffic volumes at that intersection for various times a year.
Excuse me, there are no questions from the gallery. This is a presentation. Thank you.
Apropos nothing, these are just cars, and the light lines at the bottom are during off-peak, so summer times, and the dark lines are during peak periods.
So this was another option for the main Gasbro intersection. That was from the most recent study, where a roundabout was actually considered compared to an intersection. Again, with our updated data through this study, we'll be looking at various intersection upgrades, potentially signals, potentially a roundabout, but again, more focused on how we accommodate vehicles, but also pedestrians and cyclists. So why this project is happening now? I guess some of our goals of this project are to come out with actionable items that we can introduce right away. So these may be kind of quick hit measures that can be done through capital budget. It could be tactical tests similar to the bike lane projects where we implement something with temporary materials that can be tested. A big part of this project is getting non-pandemic data collection. So traffic data during the pandemic was extremely variable. So this study will kind of update that data collection for more typical usage. We're really focusing on solutions for all users and not just private vehicles. Demand management. So we will also consider how using or improving active transportation and transit can actually reduce our traffic volumes. And really crystallize a clear path forward. So we've had these multiple studies done over the year through, we'll be reviewing their work, updating their work, and likely coming up with some more solutions, but really to synthesize the various actions through active transportation and in traffic upgrades that have been planned over the years. So part of our data collection, we'll be using MyoVision data collection. This is kind of the industry standard. It'll be a portable roadside camera. They're actually mounted to telephone poles. And the cameras automatically collect through video all users through the intersection. So it collects pedestrians, cyclists, cars. It can count buses, specifically heavy vehicles, tractor trailers. So we'll be really taking a holistic view of what the volumes are for everybody that's traveling through the key intersections we'll be looking at. We'll capture data on kind of the average fall weekday, and also we'll define some peak days, likely during harvest, where we expect more traffic and pedestrians than usual. And we'll use past data for kind of our low traffic days. We're really looking at kind of identifying the peaks and identifying upgrades that can address those peaks. We'll also be looking at a few different growth scenarios. This is just a generic figure, but we'll be looking, especially based on the housing acceleration project, we'll be looking at high, medium, and low growth scenarios. So we'll be forecasting population and traffic volumes probably over a 20-year period, just to identify upgrades that provide benefits now, but are also appropriate for the future. And again, through this study, we'll need to account for active transportation, transit, and other efforts. This could be carpooling, it could be the use of scooters, car share, various transportation initiatives that can lower the reliance on private vehicle, but also just lower vehicle volumes in general.
Yeah, so the scenarios that Harrison will be running, we're not going to be assuming that the exact same proportion of people are going to be driving in the future. The scenarios he looks at will consider the potential that a greater share of people might switch to active transportation or transit or other modes. So there's project starting right now with a council presentation. The next steps will include some stakeholder engagement over the coming weeks. Data collection and analysis will especially occur in October. In October, November, there will be travel scenario demand modeling. We'll be working away in the background at this point while the Housing Accelerator Fund work is also coming forward and late in the year. We'll develop a toolbox in November and December. The next round of stakeholder discussion, the details are still being pinned down, but it'll likely be in January after the Housing Accelerator work is done. And then we'll be working on design between January and February and aiming to deliver a final report for you in March in 2026, I should say, excuse me, and for a town council decision in March 2026. So we're going to bring to you a toolbox of actions that can improve the transportation experience for people in this core area of Wolfville. This may include, here's some early concepts, but jetpack will be especially useful, I think. This will include actionable interventions on specific intersections. So from Main and University to Highland, Elm, Linden, Central, and Gasborough. So of course, Gasborough and Main is one that attracts a lot of attention, but these other intersections are also very important and can suffer serious issues as well. So we want to address all of those. We'll look at options for meeting different needs on different streets. We don't have to achieve everything on every street, try to cram everything in. It's a bit challenging with Wolfville because so much is directed down Main Street, but if we can achieve other goals such as active transportation, et cetera, on surrounding streets, we'll aim to do that. We will aim to offer solutions that creates an even better place to visit, socialize, and spend time. So intersections, historically, when you visit beautiful cities around the world, often it's the intersections you remember, where the really prominent buildings are, where a lot of action takes place. So it's very important that these intersections aren't just designed to move people through to somewhere else quickly, but are creating a place that people remember. So we want to achieve those multiple goals simultaneously. We'll look at regional solutions for rerouting traffic. So are there ways that we can get some truck traffic, some car traffic off of Main Street and find other routes for people to go? How can we encourage those other routes? Are there other strategies? And we'll be tackling this work through a few principles. Now, these principles we're about to show you, consider this as a question for you. This is what we understand after the materials we've looked at, like a good approach to doing this, and as professionals, what we consider best practice right now. But really, we're here to get your feedback on this.
So here's a diagram. We kind of call it the upside down triangle. Historically, the streets have been the priorities for vehicles. So the intent has always been move as many cars as possible, add sidewalks where they fit. So it's really car traffic has been at the forefront, and everything else has been secondary. So with kind of modern principles, we're really flipping that upside down and designing streets for all users. So we try to prioritize this pedestrians and cyclists. Safety is a big part of it. Usually public transit follows active transportation. We have other mobility options, which again could be car share, carpooling, and then finally private vehicles. So we're really flipping the mindset with who we're designing for and prioritizing.
And we should mention the exact wording here is drawn from the MPS policy for Wolfville.
This is a figure, and there's a lot of detail in here. But I guess traditionally how we've evaluated roads is through a level of service measure. And it's really been focused on vehicle delay. So no delay would score an A, a little delay would score a B, kind of et cetera, down to an E or F, which is where the road's starting to fail. More recently, we developed what's called the multimodal level of service. So this is looking at each mode. As you can see across the top, there's a pedestrian and a cyclist, transit, trucks, so goods movement, and then private vehicles. So really the main thing that we want to kind of highlight is that your target for all modes isn't always an A. In this case, for a Main Street, or for Main Street itself, pedestrian cyclists, we look to target an A level of service. Transit may be a B, and then goods and vehicle traffic may be an E. And it's not that we want an E, but an E is likely acceptable. So we don't want free flow traffic on Main Street. We want people to be able to drive on Main Street for sure, and we don't want to see gridlock. But it's more about managing congestion instead of completely solving it.
And here, what does E mean? Well, it means 36 to 55 seconds of delay at an intersection in a main street with, a few intersections. So not 20 minutes, not 30 minutes.
So this is just a figure that shows what Main Street may look like with a vehicle level of service A. So in order to do that, we would be making it a 4-lane roadway, removing patios, removing trees and parking. There'd be wider lanes, but this is what a level of service A would look like. You would see very little to no delay. So this is a kind of an extreme figure, but just to try to kind of visualize what that looks like.
What it means to optimize for that goal fully.
This figure just shows the road capacity based on vehicle speed. So some people think the faster the vehicle speeds are, the more traffic is actually getting through. But what we actually find is when traffic's moving slower, you're actually able to get more road capacity over a full hour. Your cars are moving together. There's not large gaps. So sometimes when we actually slow traffic down, we actually get more traffic throughput.
So if you're asking, how far can people travel in a certain amount of time, going a little slower can actually increase the number of kilometers people have traveled. Then that breaks down at a certain point. If you go too slowly, if you get gridlock, then obviously it's just not working for anybody. But there is a sweet spot there. Same for safety. The ideal from a safety perspective is not free flow traffic. So we saw this during the pandemic. Many communities saw much more traffic fatalities with pedestrians and vulnerable road users because there was free flow traffic, very little congestion. And so cars were driving much faster than usual. And the speed is one of the most dangerous factors for outcomes for vulnerable road users. So this graph shows that as congestion goes up, the number of traffic fatalities for pedestrians goes down. Now, there are some outliers as congestion gets really bad on the right. If congestion gets too bad, you get people driving through intersections quickly, getting frustrated. So this can cause the reverse problem. It's again where there's a sweet spot where a bit of congestion can act as a traffic calming measure effectively. But too much congestion, you get frustrated drivers, unpredictability, and it can lead to worse problems. There's a useful approach for thinking about how do we design for streets in a downtown context like the center of Wolfville versus a regional road or a highway. And to get at this distinction, I find it useful to compare the experience of drivers in Atlanta and Amsterdam. So this was a study published in Nature 2 years ago that showed that the number of jobs you could reach by car in a given amount of time was lower in Atlanta. With all of its massive highways and big roads, it was lower in Atlanta than it was in Amsterdam. Now, of course, Amsterdam is also better for walking, biking, and transit, but how is Amsterdam better for driving than Atlanta? Well, it's because in Amsterdam, you have two kinds of street. You have your roads that provide very high speed, free flow traffic between communities. And then when you reach communities, you slow right down. And what you have is many destinations. So the road optimizes for speed and the community optimizes for proximity, which also benefits drivers. So if you want to optimize for proximity, what you want to do is lots of mixed use development, lots of businesses opening up in a given area, lots of offices. And to do that, you need lots of people walking and biking and taking transit because then you can fit more stuff in a given space. And then drivers don't need to drive as fast to reach more destinations in a given amount of time. So applied to Wolfville, intuitively, if you want to get between Wolfville and Halifax, you want that highway going as fast as possible. If you want to get to more places within Wolfville, you want there to be more destinations on the street, not to be going 100 kilometers an hour. So speed matters less for your travel time than does creating a great place with many destinations in a context like Wolfville. So in terms of discussion, we'd like to start with, do you continue to support the upside down pyramid? Do you continue to support this desire to first prioritize active transportation, then public transit, then other mobility options? And sorry about the diagram's not perfect here. That should really show like shared mobility and car share, et cetera, and then private vehicles. I want to emphasize that our interpretation of this triangle is not that we're going to punish drivers. It's not that we're going to make driving a terrible experience that doesn't work. But in terms of how if we have to make a choice between these competing priorities, we see people walking and experiencing the street and being on the street as the first priority. We welcome any thoughts from you on that.
Would you like me to pause right now and we can discuss that as council?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to remind everybody in the gallery that this is a council discussion. If there are any questions that they can be either answered at the second public input or an email. So this is for council discussion right now. Councillor Van Niekerk.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really interesting and informative. I appreciate all the information. With respect to this triangle, I guess my only thought on how it's prioritized is I'd love to see some data, I guess, between the use of public transportation and then where you have other mobility options, given that we're trying to promote the use of bikes in town through the rec hub and the bike lanes. And then there's the scooter business. And we see a lot of those other mobility options happening in town. And I just wonder how that compares to King's Transit. Not that we don't want to prioritize it, but just in terms of what it is that we are trying to promote and where the usage is coming from. It might be that those two switch. That's just a question that I would have.
Not sure who's first. Councillor Elliott.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering about microtransit. We're talking about it. Have you been factoring that in to your thinking?
Yes, so this project isn't going to be focused on microtransit. Microtransit factors into how we're modeling the assumptions, how much traffic we're expecting. So if we assume that a certain amount of future traffic could be transitioned to microtransit and other solutions, then we can reduce some of those long-term forecasts.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. I guess I'll make two comments. I'm not sure they're questions, but the first comment I would make would be like if you change the interaction at one intersection, what does it do to the next intersection? Because we all have ideas on how to fix our traffic problem, but have you been to New Minas or Colebrook lately? I mean, it's not exactly unique to Wolfville. And if we connect, if you fix a particular intersections problem, is it just kicking it down the road to the next intersection? That would be my concern. And my other question is, okay, we have great ideas and are up pie in the sky ideas, but are you guys going to throw numbers at this, or is that in your scope, or your dollar numbers into the scope of your project to fix it?
Yes, so I guess your first question, part of the reason we're looking at the corridor level versus the last study looked at Main and Gaspereau in isolation. So we'll be looking at the corridor as holistically as we can, so that the last thing we want to do is completely open up Main and Gaspereau, and it just pushes the bottleneck to the next intersection. So that'll be a key part of our traffic modeling. And with cost estimates, we won't be doing detailed cost estimates. We're not doing detailed design or anything like that, but we will be providing high level cost estimates and trying to work with town staff to come up with solutions that are realistic and can be planned within future capital budgets.
It's very important that when we come to council with this in March, that council is able to make informed decisions in terms of the priorities of this stuff, given what it means for costs, capital budget. So definitely that high level cost estimate is an important deliverable for this project.
Mayor McKay?
Thank you. I'm assuming we're going to talk about the corridor in a later discussion. We're just talking about this question for now, because I would like to talk about that, but I'll answer this one for now. I think that the private vehicles I think when people see this, it looks like we're punishing drivers. So I think we need to be clear if that's not what we're doing. And I think if we're going to flip this, then we must make sure whatever is above the private vehicles is in place and works really, really well. Otherwise, it's hard to get buy-in and people will still drive their own cars. So I think, and there are people who will still need to drive their own cars for, mobility issues and things like that. So I think there's lots at play here. I agree that I would love to see more. I would love to see microtransit and other things come into play so that we don't use private vehicles as much. But those things need to be in place and work really well before we can start saying we're going to take private vehicles off the road.
Councilor Butler?
Yeah, I'm glad you, thank you, Mayor McKay. I'm glad you said that because looking at that, it does look like private vehicles are at the bottom for a reason. And I see a lot of private vehicles, both in terms of those that live in Wolfville, but mostly those that visit Wolfville. So it looks like we're punishing those that both drive their vehicles in town and wish to visit. And I know that that's not the goal. I'm a firm believer that active transportation should be right at the very top. I walk everywhere. I'm excited for the microtransit discussion and updated numbers for public transportation as well. I know between King's Transit and King's Point to Point, where on this would say like private bus tours fit in, like visitor tours and stuff, because they usually like small bus, like if they come up from the cities and stuff like that, whereabouts would those fit? I know folks that come into town usually need to get here by a vehicle and then they can walk and bike within the town. But like if a group wants to come up from Halifax, where does that fit into this sort of, where's that going to fit into the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, so other mobility options. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Councilor Palmer?
I just want maybe expand a little bit on what Mayor McKay was saying there. How do we identify the difference between a car that's from Moncton, Avonport, or Wolfville? And I don't think that's going to be possible.
Yeah.
So how do and active transportation is really hard for the guy in Avonport is not going to walk from Avonport to here, or at least not very many of them are, maybe a few of them are. But so how do we deal with, and I suspect, and this is my gut feeling, that if you went by there, that 30% of those cars out there today, or maybe even 70%, are not people who live in Wolfville. So the active transportation question is not going to fix that problem. So how do we so how do you address that problem, not necessarily fix it?
So it is going to be hard for us to determine how many people are, where people are coming from and going to. I think there's been ideas that have been explored in the past for reducing regional traffic coming through Main Street, like variable message signs at the highway, saying that Main Street's congested, and if you're not going to downtown, you're likely better to take the next exit. We will be looking at options to try to kind of communicate to people that traveling through town may not be the quickest route. It may be quicker to go out and around. But I think by promoting active transportation locally, that's really where you're getting the most benefit to reduce the amount of traffic volumes, which benefits visitors. We're not expecting that we're going to ignore vehicles and ignore people driving here from other towns to visit. And we're not saying that private vehicles don't matter. It's just that it's lower on the prioritization. Really, I guess the big thing is we're trying to manage congestion and not solve it. So we're not accepting complete gridlock by any means. We want to see slow, steady traffic that works for everybody, but it's just we're not looking to open up the street to solve traffic issues, I guess.
Yeah, and I just want to say that your point is well taken. One of the challenges going into this study is that we do not have an effective strategy for differentiating or identifying what proportion of traffic is regional versus local. And so we have to make some assumptions going into the analysis. That does put a bit of a cap on what proportion of that traffic out there could shift to active transportation. If you're dealing with like a downtown of a big city, you could hope to achieve, 60, 70% in some places active transportation. We're not going to do that here for the regional traffic. There are other strategies we'll employ at the same time that Harrison mentioned. Yeah.
Thank you. I just have a question also. I think that the upside down triangle with the private vehicles at the bottom with the little purple there will be a visual that people will be like, oh my gosh, you're not taking any action on that. So as we move forward on the microtransit, maybe that is added to the public transportation, but I think of like mobility options, especially biking and the work that we're going to be doing on the Harvest Moon Trail with active transportation as like a part of active transportation. And then I'm looking at, you've got the skateboarders and the scooters, which have been problematic above private vehicles, right? So I'm just wondering, like, I'm a visual learner and a lot of people are a visual, if we can maybe come up with something a little bit different.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And please excuse the, should have had more of a car share image on the second from the bottom, but your point's well taken.
All right. No more questions. I don't see anybody's lights on regarding that. Did you want to keep moving on? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tristan.
In terms of the design principles, we want to check in on two key issues for how we're approaching this work. So does this sound right? Success equals slow, steady, high volume throughput for cars, and acknowledging that slowdowns will happen during peak days, but avoiding total gridlock. So we want to make sure we get lots of people through the street effectively and efficiently, though not at high speed all the time, and that we use design solutions that avoid people just getting totally trapped in long-term traffic behind intersections that just stop moving. How does this sound as an articulation of the target we should be aiming for the project?
Can you just define what you mean by grid?
Excuse me, we'll just go through the chair here and ask questions. Are we pausing here again to get the council? Okay, yeah. Okay, so have a look at the at what is written up there. And Councillor Van Niekerk, do you have a question?
I was wondering
Okay.
if you could clarify what you mean by gridlock. Like when we see the cars backed up a mile outside the intersection, is that gridlock, or do you mean like a mess at the intersection?
Yeah, it's when the network is failing. So when traffic is getting so backed up that it feels like you're not getting anywhere, it's you're not seeing that relief. So I guess when we're talking slow, steady, there may be lines at intersections, but you're moving. It may be slow, but you're always getting through.
Because I feel like when we look at it now, that even when it's backed up 2 miles down the road, it is still slowly moving. I mean, isn't that the case? It is always moving. Do we ever have a gridlock on our hands now? Like, haven't we already achieved that?
I think this is something that we could put a little bit more analysis into and put a finer point on. But I would think that for the number of cars coming through, to have the backup to the extent that it is, it's more than you would expect for that level of cars.
So it's more about reducing the backup length. Because we
Making
are,
sure that intersection is working consistently, because my understanding is that sometimes with this steady drip of pedestrians, people just stop getting through for like long periods sometimes, which leads to more backup than you would expect.
Okay, so really reducing the backup.
That's a major component.
Yeah, and I guess we're kind of simplifying it, saying slow and steady. Really, when we do our evaluation, like we're doing traffic modeling that's detailed with metrics. A lot of it's actually around delay. So how long are you waiting at each intersection? So that's really where it comes in on the technical side.
Right.
Yeah, and technically, we're trying to avoid level of service F.
Yeah.
Very simply.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Butler?
Through the chair, I just have a quick question because I hear slow and steady. To me, that indicates safety. It means a level of safety if cars continue to be aware that they can't speed down Main Street. They have to be slow. They have to. I used to work at the intersection when I worked at TAN, and it was the most entertaining part of my day because everyone watched the intersection, and it would just be a matter of cars would get to the four-way and not know who was next. And then a pedestrian would get in the way, thus gumming up the work of who. And next thing you know, it's 3 and 4 cars backed up. And there are times we are coming up to harvest time when it's generally not all of our fault that the traffic is backed up because people are picking out their pumpkins just outside of town and it does back up the traffic. So it's all of those factors, but slow and steady to me indicates safety. And I love that it is going slow down Main Street, but observing it, I'm watching that folks are aware there are pedestrians crossing and there are young kids and families, and there are now scooters and bikes and this, and I like that concept. I did find gridlock is a hard word. I've never seen what I would consider full gridlock. It's always slow moving. It's inconvenient, but that's the person's inconvenience, not what's like, if I'm 5 minutes late to something and I'm caught in traffic, that's my fault, so I do like the slow, steady approach of that. So
Thank you. Counselor Williams?
Yeah, my question is, you've got cameras that will tell you how many vehicles are passing per hour or how many pedestrians. Will they also tell you how much backup there is at each intersection? Because that's another thing to consider.
So the cameras don't do that specifically. We can review the video, but you don't see everything just depending on where the camera is pointed. But we do that through our traffic modeling software. So we'll input the data that we collect into a traffic model and then actually calculate delays, queue lengths, things like that. And then we will be kind of doing field observations as well to calibrate that model.
Okay.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, all models need to be calibrated with real-time data.
For sure. And that's why we're collecting this new data. So sometimes you would use old data and say, we've seen 2% growth. Just with COVID and everything, that's part of the reason we're collecting new data in the next couple months.
Mayor McKay?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I don't know that we've ever seen gridlock based on that definition, but people do need to go slowly down Main Street. There is so much action happening on Main Street, which is a great thing. So I think slow and steady is exactly it. Yes, the queue lines can get long. I feel like they're not, well, during certain times of the year. And maybe those are the special days we have to look at something different, but figuring out what that queue line is and what's appropriate. But I think when we look at the whole corridor, we'll figure something out. But yeah, it's slow and steady is definitely, I think, what everybody would like to see down Main Street.
Counselor Williams?
I wonder whether there's a certain personal responsibility to try to reduce the congestion simply by changing the timing of their visits to and from the centre part of the town.
It's definitely something that works well. Usually when we see congestion, it's in a peak hour. So if you can spread your volume throughout that peak, it definitely helps. It's a really good tool for reducing congestion. How we implement that is kind of difficult. Tristan, I don't know if you have anything.
Just that, we are going to be looking at a few other strategies under the demand management bucket. So that would fall under that, maybe there's some employers in town that could stagger when people are supposed to arrive at work if that's posing a challenge for peak periods. There's other strategies we'll look at. I mean, microtransit was mentioned, but also the parking strategy, which is another project, but there a large proportion of local traffic may be people circling looking for parking, especially during peak times of year. And so if we can come up with solutions to ensure that people can find parking spots faster, that we're using our spaces more efficiently, that can reduce local traffic as well. So there's these other strategies we'll look at.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I can't resist bringing up the number of student-owned vehicles that come to Wolfville every September. And we've talked multiple times around the table about working with Acadia to try and discourage every student who possibly can from bringing a car to Wolfville and adding to the gridlock. Have we gotten anywhere with that?
See you.
I don't know that we've had any conversations recently around student vehicles. Yeah, I think that's all I can say right now. We haven't had any discussions with Katie recently around reducing the number of student vehicles.
I always think of former councillor Isabel Madeira Voss, whose next door backyard has 5 cars in it. And that's Linden Avenue, and it's 2 blocks to campus. No, 1 block. So begs the question.
Maybe under that demand management bucket, we can take a look at that.
Councillor Van Niekerk.
Can I just make a comment? Isn't that something that we're kind of looking at in the Housing Accelerator Fund with respect to parking requirements?
Yes, so that would be another project. Parking strategy is not the focus of this project.
Right.
But it's another set of work that's happening right now.
So by reducing parking requirements, potentially there'd be less parking for students to bring cars. So, if you give everybody a parking spot, everybody's going to have a car. Build it and they will come.
Okay, any more questions about the design principles?
Yes, so I think we've actually had a lot of this discussion. These are our last questions though. If there's anything else that you want to tell us? So we want to ask, what does success look like and what do you want us to solve? And is there anything else you want us to know about these intersections? So there's already been a lot of discussion about what success looks like to you, but please let us know if there's anything else, if there's anything that you want to make sure that when we come to you in March, that the kinds of solutions or the kinds of problems that we're solving when we come back to you.
Mayor McKay?
So I think this is where we need to talk about the corridor and the length of it, because what I feel happens a lot of the time, I mean, I live on the west end and we hear from people on the east end. People come into town on both ends going, well, should be 60, probably more like 80. And they fly along until they hit the first stop, which on the west end, unless there's some kids crossing in front of Landmark East, the next one is University. So people fly in, they hit there, students cross the street there, there's a lineup because they just fly and fly and fly and fly. Same on the other end, everyone flies in and they get to corner of Gaspereau and Main. So I think we need to start at both ends of town. And I think everyone who lives on both of those ends of towns will say that the safety where they live is less than downtown because people are going way too fast. So I think we need to start from one end to the other and say, what's feeding into that? Because it just doesn't, I mean, they don't just miraculously show up at Gaspereau and Main. They've come from other places. So let's span that out some and think about what those look like. Because I think that will add to the slow and steady instead of everyone rushing in, stopping and creating those things. So I think that needs to be longer on the corridor list. That's my first comment, if anyone agrees or.
Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, well, I kind of wonder if it's not a 2-stage problem, because if you were out here What time is it now? Is it 10 o'clock yet? So if it's not 10 o'clock, we do not have a traffic problem on this end of town. Maybe down at the university, we do at 8:30 when the students are crossing. So we don't have a traffic problem here at this four-way stop until later in the day. And then by 6 o'clock, God knows we don't really have a traffic problem. So the idea of trying to develop a whole big project that's going to change the whole dynamic of the street for, and we all could, we all know when the hours are of the day. So even I think somehow or another, two switches, like after 8, before 10, I don't know what the timing is, but something like that would certainly work in this town, I would think. But I have a few ideas, but every time I mention them, everybody laughs at me. But but there are a few things I think we could do at that four-way stop, short of a traffic light. I mean, and short of a roundabout. There's quite a few different things we could do. So I'm hoping you guys will be looking at the timing and how severe it is at times, and how insevere it is at times.
Chair, should I ask him to elaborate, or we could follow up?
You need some clarification. Do you need some clarification on the question or?
I'd be curious to talk to you at some point about your specific ideas. Okay.
Councillor Elliott?
Just wondering if other people have found, as I have in discussions with residents about the bollards, that they are admittedly a measure to slow traffic. Certainly from my driving sensibility. And that wasn't a stated intent, but it has worked that way. So maybe we keep them. I don't know.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with what Mayor McKay said. I feel like it is, having lived on Chestnut and, you walk to Kent and Cherry, like those are entrances onto the main street that do factor into the full traffic of what's coming in and out. I live right by the Acadia Athletics Complex and I see buses come in at 7:30 in the morning, and with students going to the gym, they have to wait quite a bit to pull in to get students, then they wait to get out. It starts to create at very early in the morning that congestion. I was wondering, I like that you say that you're trying to help the congestion and not solve it. I don't know if you'll ever actually solve it or if you'll ever please everybody. But what I was wondering about is those entrance and exit points onto the main road, if that is something that is going to be taken into a factor when doing this. I look at the Tim Hortons across the street. It does have 2 entrances here and 2 exits and 2 if it was just an entrance in one and an exit in the other, so folks had to, you could only go in and out from one way, would it stop folks trying to get in and out beside each other to get onto the main street? Same with maybe some other entrance and exit points along the corridor. If that, I don't know if that, is it just a factor? We have a one-way at the far at Shoppers where you go in one way and out the other that nobody follows. And I think that affects the traffic on Main Street, because there is a crosswalk right there to the BMO that folks are trying to, and the post office as well is a double going in and out. I think those entrance points and exit points do factor into the traffic at those peak times as well, if that's something that's going to be looked at.
So we wouldn't be doing any specific data collection for those driveways, but definitely a consideration. The Tim Hortons was one that came to mind, obviously, for us. Shoppers wasn't aware of that, but that stuff like that we would look at a high level, but we wouldn't do specific data collection or modeling.
Thank you.
I just want to jump in there and just build a little bit on what Councillor Butler said. So I think it's important to look at some of the, streets like the, especially going, I guess, let's see, north, south, because you look at key intersections and some people are getting frustrated, and it's one of my frustrations. I don't have a frustration so much on Main Street because I know that there's going to be, but if I'm sitting there, and I'll use the gym as an example, and that's a whole new, ball game there. I can't turn, I might spend 10 minutes trying to turn onto oncoming traffic. So if we can identify certain streets, like I typically, from where I live, I drive down Gaspereau because I know I'm going to get a turn to turn. But there's key streets, like I look at Kent per se, you have the double lane there, but there is frustration of like, I'm waiting 10 minutes and I know over in Sterling Avenue, they're waiting 10 minutes to get out to, turn to, New Minas. And so can we look at some of these streets that maybe are more problematic? Because, we all live in Wolfville. I drive to where the minimal is that I'm going to be able to turn left or right and not have to wait, because I'd rather get in the traffic than spend, because I'm reliant on somebody to stop for me. So is that something that we can factor in on some of those streets? What are some of the key streets? I'm looking at Sherwood Drive, which,
Balcom and what's across the street?
Basically
Westwood, yeah.
They
yeah.
literally butt heads.
Yeah,
And
well,
if
so
folks are trying to both go
those to
left-
me are a little I think are problematic, because that's where I get frustration. We all get frustration. So if we could factor in those, and then I'm looking at Highland. That's another one that I'm like, I'm not going down there. This is a busy time of day. I'll never be able to turn. Like, I'll just never be able to turn. So then you factor in where you can go. So I don't know if that can be looked at, but certainly we all sort of figure out how we can get around and in the fastest way. So that's just a comment. Councillor Van Niekerk.
Yeah, I guess maybe just building on that, but I have 2 quick points. I think the Highland main intersection is interesting, and same with the University main one, because they don't have a solution in place right now to maintain slow, steady, right? Like, at least with the 4-way, there's a system that works, that keeps cars moving through it. But at Highland and University, there's no system. You have to sit and wait until somebody lets you out. So it feels like that's almost more problematic in a lot of ways. But the other thing I just wanted to mention, as you move forward with this, I know you saw on the timeline, you showed one of the next steps was to engage with key stakeholders. And I just wanted to make sure that there was a really thorough amount of stakeholder engagement done with the business community on this project, because they are front and center on Main Street, and they often feel left out of these discussions as it relates to parking and traffic. And they live and breathe it every day. They hear from their customers on it. So I just want to highlight that as being key to your success here. Thank you.
Mayor McKay.
Yeah, and as Director Lake reminded me too, this is part of, like, at Sherwood and Sterling will have different parts of AT, and that'll be all put in the thing too. So I do think we need to look at the whole street. I think we need to look at all of the things that everyone brought up. And I think this was a huge discussion at when we did our first meeting of council of what we heard. It was probably this and flooding were probably the 2 largest thing. And, I didn't miss very many doorsteps. It was almost every doorstep. So engagement is going to be huge on this one, and what people think, and, what's going to work, and providing solutions. But I think we need to look at the whole thing from start to finish, figure out how that slow and steady works. As Councillor Rennie says, there's 2 spots on that end that are really problematic. And they're not just at 8:30 in the morning, they're at every time a class changes. So at 10, at 12, at 3, at 5. And it's a lot, and we do have a lot of crosswalks downtown. I actually had to stop and look. We have one at Highland, Elm, Linden, Central, Harborside, Locust, and Willow. And that, I actually searched how far that was, and it's 750 meters. So every 100 meters, we have a crosswalk downtown, which is interesting. I didn't really think about that before until I read this. So yeah, I think there's lots of things to think and consider, but I think a good discussion with us, if there was time, and a good engagement is going to be key.
Are there any more questions? Is there anything else that you have
Nope,
to present?
that's it.
No? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. All right, we are now moving on to information report on micro transit feasibility study with Lindsay and Barb.
hold the button towards yourself, is it? Oh, you are.
And we're excited to share some updates on transit with you very timely following presentation from two. So as many of you who were council last year will recall, we did do a feasibility study for microtransit in 2022. And it was a more of a preliminary look at what a microtransit system might look like for Wolfville with a very high level business case. So we're taking a chance to work again with consultants not out of the studio who produced the first study to do some updates to this work. This study was funded through province through NS TRIP, which is a funding stream to help improve public transportation access across the province. And it was also done during the time that King's Transit was doing a review of their services. So it was a bit of an awkward time where we were bound by the funding deadlines, but we were also kind of waiting for King's Transit to finish their study to see what the implications would be for Wolfville. That's wrapped up. There hasn't really been much of a difference for service in Wolfville. At the time, they were looking at a microtransit service for smaller towns like Wolfville and Berwick. But that idea has been shelved, so now is a good time to dust this off and work on some updates. So some of the key recommendations.
Excuse me, in the gallery, there are no questions right now.
Some of the key recommendations you offer, and so that would involve using an app on your smartphone, calling up the transit driver to request a pickup, and it would pick up you up similar to Uber, either at your address or a safe location nearby, and drop you off at your chosen destination within town. It also focused on the use of electric vehicles over gas powered or other modes, just as an opportunity to reduce emissions in town, lowering the carbon mode of transportation. It looked at using a opportunity to offset the cost of operating this type of service. However, the numbers that were pulled in the study are super reflective of what an actual scenario might look like under our discussions that we're having and that the consultants are receiving now from PBL. So they're going to update that outlook as well, and also focus on options as well. So we have been receiving a lot of positive feedback about this from the first time we published it on Wolfville News in 2022. We don't get a ton of action on that page anymore, but we do still get a few people every couple responding to a survey that we do have up, and all of the positive, excuse me, all of the feedback to date, whether or not people see themselves using this as a mode of transportation. As we just heard from our colleagues here, we do have a lot of ongoing work that's related to town. So through the Accelerator Fund, we are looking to reduce household costs. So one of the factors that goes into your shelter costs is transportation. So this is one tool that the town has to directly influence shelter costs. They're also looking at parking requirements in town and reducing those, which could be a tool to help reduce parking in town. And there's a gap of people that get around town, so microtransit is an option to fill that gap. So exploring ways to reduce traffic in the downtown. So this could be one tool as well that fits into that mobility recipe. And we have also seen the very successful launch of Recreation, which has had a very impressive uptake and is micro-mobility, shared mobility. And as well, our active transportation network has been being implemented gradually. So Barb and I were very lucky. We went on a fun trip to the town of Bridgewater, Yarmouth, to explore their transit systems that they have in town. So I'm going to talk about those in a moment, but I just want to hand it over to Barb to talk about Wolfville's accessibility plan, some support we've received from KBF.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay, and good morning through the chair to council and to staff and guests here. And again, there is such a strong connection with the previous presentation, so really happy with how the agenda lined up this morning. So microtransit and the drive to kind of put some energy back into this initiative is baked into the accessibility plan that council just approved for us. So this is our newer 4-year plan. And why that's in there specifically is because during our engagement, we did a lot of surveying of the community. We had a lot of conversations. We did a lot of listening. And what we were hearing was from residents who were starting to experience different levels of mobility challenges. These are folks who are choosing to age in place, live in the community that they have always called home. These are folks who live on hills, where many of the great things about Wolfville are at the bottom of the hills. So what's starting to happen is people are indicating that they know that if they can leave the car at home, it's better for everybody. We know that a lot of our local traffic congestion comes from people just scooting around in town. But there are people who are starting to experience mobility issues, not hitting that threshold where they might receive an accessibility permit for an accessible parking space. So if they're coming downtown, they might not be able to get a parking spot close enough to work for them. And really, they could walk down here. It's just if they get groceries and other supplies, how do they get them back up the hill in a way that's comfortable and helps people feel that they're a big part of the community? And that's where microtransit starts to play into this. And Lindsay and I will talk about that go forward, because we saw a lot of that in Bridgewater and in Yarmouth. So microtransit is in our accessibility plan because as people start to experience different challenges with mobility, keeping in mind that 1 in 3 Nova Scotians lives with some form of disability. So as we start to experience these challenges, having a service that is running in our town that allows us to walk one way or to roll or stroll one way, and then have the option to have microtransit deliver you back home up a hill would be a great opportunity for us to go forward. So we did have conversations with Acadia. They are on board with this, but they are really wanting to see this as an accessible service, meaning that folks who have mobility challenges, who are using mobility devices, are able to get on and off the buses independently and to access everything Wolfville has to offer. And a conversation was had at that time with Acadia about students and parking. And there was definitely consensus around if we provide more options to get folks around town more easily and remove barriers, that it would be more likely for people to not feel the need to bring a vehicle here.
So jumping back to our trip we were watering Yarmouth, this is a collage of some photos of that time, so you can see Barb enjoying transit service. So we visited these places and we engaged with their staff and some bus drivers as well on logistics and what their experience has been, any opportunities and issues that they have had to overcome. And so Bridgewater has had their bus up and running for 8 years and Yarmouth for 10. So together they've had a lot of experience to share with us. We walked them through what our feasibility previously had recommended and took all of their advice and concerns that they've had with some of the key recommendations with that part. And I'm going to walk through just 3 key pieces that stood out from what they shared with us. So the first is talking about the service model. So our initial feasibility assessment, it did look at a fixed route option, but at the end of the day, it did recommend service model. That was primarily because of the technology that exists today for connecting buses, and concern that if there's low ridership, that we would have a bus with no passengers on it, just continue to move around town. What we've learned from the other towns is that they have seen a significant ridership, and it increases over time. So with that in mind, they also said to us that the two most important factors of a successful micro transit or any transit system is consistency and reliability. And the best way to have a system that is consistent and reliable is to have a fixed route. That means that people know when it's coming and when and where it's going to reach their nearest destination, so that they can plan their work day, their school trips, or make appointments and know for sure they're going to get where they need to go. Where on demand has the risk of uncertainty for the duration of your trip, where in your mind it might take 5 minutes to drive from Maple Avenue to Gaspereau. However, if the bus is also picking up so-and-so on Sherwood and then it's going on Main Street, that's going to add on an unforeseeable amount to your trip. So you might be late for work, and that's not an adequate service for people to adopt on a day-to-day basis. The next piece that stood out to us was they really emphasized actually kind of putting the electric buses on the would be nice in the future shelf. Just because, again, it plays into that reliability where the technology has advanced substantially in the past several years, but there's still barriers when you need a vehicle on the road all day, 12 where it needs time to charge, and often that charging time takes a couple of hours. So to ensure you have a vehicle on the road, gas powered is more reliable in that sense. There's also still some issues around when the vehicle is who's fixing it, and there are mechanics in general who can address a gas powered vehicle than an electric. So there are options to consider through our revised study around a hybrid situation where we have 1 or 2 gas powered and electric, or full gas fleet until the electric side of things improves. And the last thing that I will emphasize that we learned during this trip and is around a sense of community and a great transit system can create. So I have been lucky enough to hear Bridgewater speak many times of the process of launching their bus system. And she always spent a considerable amount of time speaking to the sense of community that existed on these buses, and had lots of beautiful visuals and anecdotes about that. So it was really special to go and see that in person. And it was very apparent. Barb was having a conversation with the passenger, and as soon as we walked onto the buses, we were greeted by the drivers themselves. Passengers were looking up. They were chatting with each other, and there was just it creates a sense of safety and familiarity. People recognize each other and they feel. It's also a great tool for accessibility. I have an image here just from a newspaper. And this is a passenger whose name is Kirk, and he lives in Bridgewater. Kirk has a mobility chair and rides the bus that he's celebrating his 100th ride in this picture. And this is from a few years ago. So, and in the article, Kirk says that he doesn't have anybody who can get him to appointments or to meet up with friends. So being able to go on the bus has allowed him to have agency over when his friends can go to home. And sometimes if he wants to go to the house, he can just get on the bus. And that's a really powerful and beautiful story. And on the other side here, we have the buses in the parade. And they talked to Bridgewater about celebrating the bus at any opportunity that they have, because it is an important So they have a new bus here and they decorated it. Everybody is excited about the bus, so there's a general feeling of excitement. The last anecdote that I will share is in Bridgewater. They spoke about an elderly woman who is no longer able to drive. So she left Bridgewater to move closer to somewhere where she could take this. When they brought the bus on, she moved home because she heard that she would be able to get her. So it's a great tool to enable people to age in place, and it's really excellent to see this in reality and in Nova Scotia where the context is quite similar. So those are my notes here. So what will be in the new study? So this work is still ongoing with consultants at Fathom Studio, so there's still some chances to add in some more information. But at this moment, we're looking at doing free transit service, looking at gas or a different type of model to get us ready to move to electric when time comes. Looking at also doing a fixed route and then adding flag stops. And what that means is you have your static transit route, and if you're along that route, you can just wait at the bus and it'll pick you up. And then same thing, it can drop you off along that route, like, oh, I'm just here at Spread House, and we can stop safely outside of that location. We witnessed that in Yarmouth, and it's really great to see. They'll be pulling some new data from King's Transit and our ridership numbers and getting more accurate picture of what a paid parking revenue stream might look like to help offset some of these costs, and also provide the operational capital cost assessment of whether this would actually get off the ground. So before we go to questions, anything else you want to add?
I would just reiterate the sense of community that we experienced, and that's why it was really great that Lindsay and I could go and kind of navigate both of these services. We observed relationships that existed because people were using public transit together and using micro transit together. We've talked about mobility device users having independence. Again, with the gas powered buses, the larger buses, a little ramp flips out, people get on and off the vehicle themselves. But that level of accessibility also creates more ease of transportation and mobility for folks who are pushing carriages or strollers, and also for the shoppers who start using bundle buggies, right? So people can get home with a good deal of groceries that they've purchased locally. So really nice. And the other thing that I'll add is Bridgewater's model. If kids are out in the community, the bus is considered a safe space. So if there is a youth who is out and about, who just needs to remove themselves from a situation, they can get on the bus, no charge, and they have a safe space. And that's really, I think, something that our community is proud of and we could develop here. And if members of council are interested in riding either of those buses, I know at least from Bridgewater, they would be happy to connect members of council with members of council there and take you on a similar tour to what we had. I'm sure you would enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. Did you hear that, Mayor? The mayor didn't have her microphone on, but she did say road trip. Just for clarification. Thank you very much. I can't think of a better staff collaboration than accessibility and planning. This is amazing. Your passion is definitely showing through. And I think Mayor McKay is bouncing in her seat right now. So I will open it up to the rest of council for any questions. Councillor Elliott.
As the representative on the King's Paratransit Board, there may be numbers from that organization which might feed into your study. I don't know, because they operate out of town. But I did a ride along this summer, and that sense of community with the regular passengers, and they were singing in that van. It was a large van. I don't know if that's a model we want to look at too, but there are some parallels there that might be interesting in terms of what we want to do in the future. But I think this is super, super exciting. So thank you.
Counselor Butler?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question in terms, I'm a very visual person, so I'm just seeing, I love this idea. I have promoted microtransit. I just think it's fantastic. So, but in terms of our partnerships with King's Transit, King's Point to Point, that type of thing, how this logistically works, would it be, in my mind, I see the King's Transit bus coming to a certain stop, but within the town, the microtransit system brings folks around. So the King's Transit bus would no longer have a service route within the town. They would just have a designated pickup, drop-off spot, and then the microtransit system would take over. I wondered in terms of Yarmouth and Bridgewater, how that, they must have an outside system that maybe bring folks in, or do they not? How does that work?
So speaking to Bridgewater, I think theirs is just an internal system. And so for us in Wolfville, that's what this next round of feasibility is looking at. We're not thinking at this stage about how it works with King's Transit or not. King's Point to Point will continue to operate as it always has, but we're just looking at, again, this the circuit or the route within our community. And just really building that out as what's feasible for us. And then we'll start considering any future connections.
Counselor Palmer?
Thank you. So both of the Yarmouth and Bridgewater do a circuit, or do they do a call?
They both do either, I guess the terminology is a fixed route.
Okay, yeah.
So it's, just a typical bus loop. Well, it's kind of a big square in Yarmouth, and in Bridgewater, it's a figure eight. And it just keeps repeating. Both of the routes ran about an hour in length. So yeah, it's really cool.
Any idea how many vehicles they have dedicated to that?
Can't remember. They have it was one vehicle doing the loop at a time.
But they own more than one vehicle?
Yes, they do. Correct.
The recommendation is to have at least 3 vehicles.
Okay,
Yeah, just to account for maintenance and other issues.
Counselor Williams?
Oh, yeah, fully support the concept, but wish to remind you that not everybody has a smartphone.
If I can speak to that, sorry, I'm going to jump in because one of the many pictures featured today of myself included me standing with the paper pamphlet, and that was for Yarmouth. We did not have a guide for the system in Yarmouth. So Lindsay and I we poured over the paper schedule, and that's how we navigated. It was nothing to do with the smartphone there. It was a very analog system. We had our paper schedule. You could see it on their website, but they also had it posted as wayfinding as part of their service.
Thank you. Counselor Van Niekerk?
I love it. Thank you. It's great. I just was wondering in that hour, how many kilometers it covered roughly? Do you know?
I don't know for sure, but I was looking up the square kilometers of each of the towns. I believe Yarmouth is about 8 or 9 square kilometers. So a little bit bigger than Wolfville, and Bridgewater, imagine it's quite a bit larger. But within a relative context of Wolfville, fairly similar.
The difference, through the chair to the counselor, the difference in my mind between the two, not understanding the physical length of the route. In Yarmouth, it seemed like a bigger geographical region was covered. There was more space between the stops once we got out of the downtown core, the one main street. In Bridgewater, there were lots of stops that were much closer together, but that's a little bit more the nature of Bridgewater itself.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mayor McKay?
Yes, I am dancing in my seat. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I actually like the fixed route, and I like that you can flag it down. I didn't quite understand that when I read it, but I think that's really neat so that if you do have a mobility issue, you can get off almost at your home type of thing. So that's wonderful. That's a great addition to that. And I think to tie it in, we did have a discussion at King's Transit about how that would tie in and stuff like that. So I think with Meg at the helm at King's Transit, we can figure something out and make it really neat and tie it in together. And thank you both for going and doing that. I think that after hearing all of you added to our pixie dust today. So thank you for it. It's great.
Thank you. I just have, I guess, one question. I did Google the populations of Yarmouth and Bridgewater, and they are similar with Acadia, although I believe the geographical size is a little bit bigger. Just remind me, they don't have fee for service, like this is free to the public also. Is there a charge for in those two communities? $2. Okay. I'm sorry. The other question is, I think you mentioned that Bridgewater has done it for 8 years. Is that right? Do they have any like ridership data per day or anything like that that you can share?
So much data.
All right. Are there any more questions before we move on? No, I don't see. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you want to keep going? Okay. So what are we at? I'm just going to respectfully call 5-10 minute break. Usually the 5 turns into 10. So let's say 10. Thank you, and we are back. We're moving on to RFD 028-2025, Council Proceedings Policy. CAO, is there anything to add to that?
I'll just give sorry, just one moment. I think we jumped one.
Oh, yeah.
Geez, I knew the CAO was on the hook, so let's jump back and go to strategic plan first draft review. I think I didn't have enough cheese
Strong.
before. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. So in Town Council reviewed its strategic plan in the spring of 2025 in a 2-day session in June, focused on the development of the following outputs, which now comprises the first draft of Council's strategic plan. A reflection on the town's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, articulation of the ideals and beliefs that guide our decisions, so our values, our purpose and approach to service, which would be our mission, and our aspirations for the town's future, which is our vision. We also looked at the anticipation of key issues facing the town during this council term, and there was contemplation of the top priorities and associated themes towards which the town's resources, our people, our money, and our time will be directed. This content is now developed and compiled into the attached strategic plan. The vision, mission, and values are verbatim from the June session. The strategic priorities are based on the notes taken during the session. Some required a little bit of interpretation or elaboration to ensure that the intended meaning was captured. In addition to providing the content developed through this process, additional information such as the town's operations and financial condition is also included to position the content within the town's greater context. Finally, a section on implementation and reporting is also included. The Town of Wolfville Strategic Plan 2025 to 2029 is presented here as a first draft. Additional editing, revisions are required to refine the content and improve the readability and the visual appeal of the document before council will consider its final approval. While staff welcome all feedback at this time from council in the document, we'd ask you to please consider the following questions. Upon reflection, do the vision, mission, and values still resonate with council? Are the priorities, focus areas, and specific initiatives reflective of council's discussion? Have efforts to clarify incorrectly change the intended meaning? Do the priorities still resonate with council? And is the proposed implementation and reporting framework appropriate? So I'll turn it over to the chair, and however you'd like to walk through review of the plan, the draft plan. I can answer any questions or take any feedback that council would like to provide.
Thank you so much, CAO. This was really exciting to see. I can't believe I almost skipped it because it's so important, and the work that you do and you know, those discussions we had back in June. Certainly you can see them here on the page. So I'll open it up to council to see if there are any questions regarding this.
I just have one simple question before I'm sure something else will come to mind. In the strategic plan, will the definitions of vision statement and mission statement be put before the mission and vision statement?
So they're intended
Like,
to
I know they're
be,
here, but will they stay in as part of, or will it just say mission, vision?
the intention was for it to stay as it's written on the page there.
Amazing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Niekerk.
Is this a time to provide feedback on the draft itself? Yeah. I just felt that the open message at the beginning that comes from town council just had a lot of pronoun use, and it just read as quite wordy with pronouns to me. We are sounded very kind of town, we own this town a little bit, I felt.
Yeah, the aim was to write it as a letter to be a little bit more informal and approachable. So I think from that lens, it probably did get a little bit more pronoun-y than if we had written it from much more of an objective base, but that was intended to create a little bit more informality and approachableness with the document.
I think it could be just balanced a bit more like still using some pronouns, but
Okay.
in the first, I think in the first sentence, there's your, our, and we. Our is used twice in the first sentence.
Are you talking about the introduction? Whereabouts are you talking, Councillor?
The
Benny?
Dear
Okay.
Wolfville message from
Okay.
town council. So I know I'm being a bit specific, but just to take the sentiment that you're going for, fine, but it feels like it's too much when I read it.
That's feedback. I didn't notice it, but I'll open it
in
up for the
terms-
people.
Sorry.
Or Mayor McKay.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying in the possessiveness part, but I think this is quite literally ours. We own it. We've created it. So we are implementing it into what we believe on behalf of the town, so maybe or the behalf of our residents. So I'm not 100% sure.
Commitment to serving our, I don't know, just seems like it's repetitive.
Maybe just a little edit from the inestimable Barb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be done. The small edit there, yeah. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I really like the document, but I have a few pedantic comments about the use of the word complementary, which has been incorrectly used with an I instead of an E. And the SI units are a mess and need to be attended to.
The what units?
The units for things like kilometers.
Oh, okay.
Mayor McKay?
Thank you. So I guess I'll just start at the beginning. I still feel that the vision and mission encapsulate what we talked about and what we felt. I think the mission, all of those were great. Assessment, that was fine. I had a couple of questions on fiscal responsibility. There was a part where it says audit committee and then question marks.
Yeah.
So think if I recall correctly on that discussion, it was our audit committee was had residents on there and it kept us accountable. I think we were always really proud of that. So I think that's what that was in that context, but I might be wrong. Someone remembers better than I, but I think it was, we were one of the first ones to ever do that. So I think we were really proud of that. And those, our members on that committee are engaging and qualified, I think. On page 11, I think 2 units, everyone, I think it's everywhere. Says, other than that, and just being sure that we spell out, AT is active transportation and all those things that, when we go through to the final edits, I think this was just for general feedback, but
What was the first one you had mentioned?
everyone, that one,
Okay, yeah, got it.
and then audit committee. And then at the very back were on page 16, I think I didn't understand how they were place communications, stable tax-based fine, Acadia wineries. Like, were they supposed to be separate points? Inclusion, safety? They didn't go together. Like, were they just not bulleted? Showed Acadia and then wineries be on the next bullet, inclusion and then safety on the next bullet.
Yeah, I think they're just supposed to be
Just
separate.
separate bullet?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so those were the things that I just wanted to point out, but all in all, it resonates as I remember our discussions to be. With some.
Yeah, those are pretty small changes that I'm sure staff will just go through and always mindful of keeping the language really as plain as we can with the acronym spelled out. I mean, but she's a champion at that. Any more?
Yeah,
questions?
just for clarity, Barb has not had a chance at this document yet. Just to be completely clear, Barb has not had a shot at this yet, so she'll, yeah.
I'm sure she will be on to that.
Yeah.
As I was looking at her. So, any more questions for the CAO? Comments, feedback? No? Okay, thank you. So I guess we will move on to the one that I tried to put beforehand. The council proceedings policy, and I'll look at our CAO also if there's anything to add.
Thank you very much. Nothing to add other than the updates that were discussed at the last committee of the whole and the last task force meeting have been included in the updated draft. And it's before you for your consideration, and myself or Laura will try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We have gone through this quite at length, but there could still be some questions or comments for clarification. It's a long one, and I just want to keep in mind that I don't expect everybody to be bang on it as we, if it gets passed and we move on to our next committee of the wholes and council meeting. So are there any questions, comments, feedback? Councillor Butler?
The way my brain's been working lately, I just need a little bit of clarification on something. Between our regular meetings and the policy task force meeting, I think we had discussed at some point having sort of a workshop trial sort of scenario based something. Am I remembering that correctly?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't just dreaming that and thinking, wow, that's a great idea. I should bring that up. It was a good idea. Okay, just
Yeah. Yeah, just for council's clarity too. So what we had discussed was convening not a real committee of the whole meeting, but just a mock committee of the whole meeting where we would facilitate various discussions and pieces so that you could actually get practical experience using some of the various pieces that we've got in the proceedings policy, because you could go through an entire council term without necessarily having to call a point of order or amend a motion or something of that nature. So what we would do is just among ourselves facilitate a pretend council meeting so you get experience in how that stuff would run.
Sorry, just remind me, did we, somewhere in our policies, do we address the in-camera and what the appropriateness is of in-camera? It's particularly, I guess we know, but what about the community citizen or community members of committees, and can we put that in camera? That can we?
So we have the protocol as to what subjects constitute an in-camera discussion and what don't in our policy, and it would be the responsibility of all committee members to familiarize themselves with that. We would do early in the council term, we would do some level of orientation, but that what's in camera is documented in the policy.
But we don't discuss that. Well, at least I haven't with my members of I chair the audit committee, and we have never discussed that. Or I have never discussed it with the citizens who are on that.
So we can, some committees have, some committees haven't, so we can bring that to the audit committee. Yeah.
Mayor McKay?
I have a question regarding land acknowledgement. At the end, I agree with reading our land acknowledgement, and that's great. What I think I struggle with is that a land acknowledgement may differ between committees and council. And that's on page 8/9 of the policy. I don't know why we would do different land acknowledgements from committee of the whole, council to different committees. If we're being, doing it in good faith and making sure we're inclusive and doing it with meaning as the one we read now, I don't know why we would do them differently between each one. And if there was one from accessibility or equity and racism where we needed to incorporate something different in the one that we're doing now, then we should take that recommendation from those committees and put them at this table. But having them different across each committee doesn't seem to make sense, and is confusing probably maybe to us and definitely the public. But if it's what our collective land acknowledgement is, I think we started to do one of those exercises last year and didn't quite get there. But maybe that's something that we could look at as a group, and we would just say that and say we would do a land acknowledgement. And I think we would be open to doing one that is inclusive of all of the committees that would feed into it. Does that make sense?
Councillor Butler?
And I'm trying to go through the discussion we had at the Equity and Anti-Racism Committee, that I think that once we get to the point where we draft the policy, it'll then go to the council task force, then come to council. So at the moment, because there isn't a land acknowledgement, I guess, policy, it's still in discussion as to what should be included and what shouldn't. So right now, I don't know if that was, we left this in, that it may differ until we have a policy in place, which means this would have to either come back to change or, but it is on our agenda with equity and anti-racism to have a policy in place with something sort of concrete for that, taking into what we already do and what other practices might come into place.
So that
Does
would
that make
be,
sense?
that would be a recommendation from the equity racism to this table to inform our land acknowledgement.
Yes.
That committee wouldn't be
We wouldn't
creating.
create it.
They
No,
would
it
be
would,
giving
yeah,
a
it would be
recommendation to do
advising it.
that.
Yeah.
So then once this passes though, we do have a policy about the land acknowledgement.
Yes.
So your question would be to make sure that it's the same. So it goes from equity, anti-racism, and then would it go to the council policy task force or come right to council?
It could be referred to the task force and then
Okay.
come to committee of the whole.
Yeah, again, just to Mayor McKay's comment that it is a recommendation because the land acknowledgement has to come from what we as a council believe is important to us and meaningful to us. So I just wanted to keep that in mind, even though you're giving a recommendation, we still have to say when it's meaningful.
Yes.
Yeah, et cetera, on that. So I think in the policy, it says that it doesn't have to be the same. So I'm hearing that maybe we want it to be the same after it goes through these procedures. So how does that change in the policy?
If that were the will of the committee, I think you can strike that second sentence.
I can read it for someone who's not on the same page, if that's okay with you. Chair.
Yes, please.
At the start of any regular council meeting, including committee of the whole and committee meetings, a member will read a territorial land acknowledgement. The second statement says the land acknowledgement may differ between committees and council. So if we were in agreement, we would strike the second part and we would just take one back with the recommendations from our committees and make one. I'm not sure that that would go through to the policy task force. I think it would, wouldn't it all come to council for us as a recommendation? Because that is a committee that would feed into us, not a committee feeding to a committee to us. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I think there may have been, I mean, we can look at the process. I think there may have been reference from other committees to the policy task force. So it more or less continued refinement before it gets to this table.
Okay.
But I don't think there's not a formal process on reference to the policy task force. I think it's been happening kind of ad hoc, where various things are referred to that task force.
Okay.
So I'll just ask council if that's a decision that we want to have that changed in the proceedings. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
nodding heads. Yeah, okay.
So just to be specific, the change that we're talking about is to strike that second sentence, to strike the land acknowledgement may differ between committees and council from the proposed policy that's in front of you.
Yes. Yes.
And just to clarify, because we haven't been doing this to make everything, these land acknowledgements, once we have established them, like on behalf of council, will be read at every single committee meeting, because presently I think it's just accessibility and anti-racism. It'll be read at every, okay, so that'll be added to the agenda, okay.
Oops.
Are there any more comments, questions regarding this? Give everybody a minute. I don't see any lights on except for the CAO. Is there anything you want to add or no? No, you're good? All right.
Your mic's off.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, would you like to put the motion on the floor?
Certainly. Are these all separate motions or read as one? Separate, okay. I would move that Committee of the Whole forward the following motion to council. The council approves the council and committee proceedings policy 110-002 as attached to RFD 028-2025 as amended.
And can I have a seconder for that? Counselor Elliott? Oh, Counselor Elliott, thank you. Is there any questions on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Counselor Butler, would you like to
Oh,
continue?
yeah, just my mic's still on. I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council, that council repeals policy 110-010 public input at meetings.
Can I have a seconder for that? Counselor Williams, thank you. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And that is carried unanimously also.
I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council, that council repeals policy 110-015 presentations to council policy.
And can I have a seconder for that? Counselor Elliott, thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that is also carried unanimously.
And I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council, that council approves amendments to policy 110-001 committees of council policy as attached to RFD 028-2025.
And a seconder for that? Counselor Van Niekerk, are there any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And that is also carried unanimously. All right, that would be it for that. All right, we're moving along to item E, RFD 034-2025, DEP guarantee KTA in Valley Waste 2025-26. And I'm looking at our new Director of Finance, Diana. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Just just a small clarification. We've changed the title from Director of Finance to Director of Corporate Services.
Okay, thank you, CAO.
All right, that's better. Okay, thank you so much. So this one will be really brief compared to the last ones, I believe. We just have a request for you today to guarantee Wolf's portion of Valley Waste Resource Management's temporary boring resolution. So as a partner of the intermunicipal service agreement that's set up to support Valley Waste, we are required to guarantee our portion of their long-term borrowing. And so in this year, the total borrowing request is for $1,465,000. Wolf's share is 7.19% of that, or $105,363. And this really is just a housekeeping item. The approval for this would have really, it would just be, the decisions would have been made when we were doing the budget for 25-26. So it really is just housekeeping now that the temporary borrowing resolution is in place. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
Thank you, Diana. Are there any questions from council? No, I don't see any. Would somebody like to put that motion on the floor?
Sure.
Councillor Palmer.
I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council guarantee a share of Valley Waste Resource Management's temporary boring resolution of $1,465,000 with Wolf's guaranteed repayment share being 7.19 equal to $105,363 as per the attached partner guarantee resolution form.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Elliott, thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. And that is also carried unanimously. Thank you. That was very good. And we're moving on to F, RFD 035-2025, appointment of development officer. Director Lake.
Is this, no, it's on. This one's really straightforward. I get the meat and potatoes agenda item today, which is wonderful. So this is very self-explanatory, but really what we're looking for is just some support for Marcia, really around vacation time. The role of the development officer is really clear in the legislation and is a really important role that we have, particularly when we have a backup or a volume of applications, we just need that extra support. So right now, I'm also a development officer, and just recently we've really faced some pressure, and Mark is sort of ready to step in and provide that support to Marcia.
Thank you, Director Lake. Are there any questions? Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, sure. I think Mr. Frederick's job is funded through the Housing Accelerator Fund. Is that correct?
It is, that's correct.
So this doesn't mean that so it's still I'll use the word term, that might not be the right word, but it's still a term job at this point.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor McKay?
Not a question, just a comment. I think with the change that's happened in the planning public works section, and as Dr. Lake said, he is also a development officer, but has now torn into a few different pieces as opposed to one, that making Mr. Fredericks a development officer certainly makes sense, and keeps the flow of our developments going in the proper direction. So thanks, great.
We try not to describe it as torn.
Torn.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions? With that being said, Mayor McKay, since you've just made that comment, would you like to put the motion on the floor?
Sure. I would move the committee of the whole for the following motion to council for decision. That council approve the appointment of Mark Fredericks as the development officer for the town of Wolfville.
I will second.
Councillor Butler, thank you. Seconder, are there any questions on that motion? Call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. Now we are going to welcome Mark up to the table. RFD 036 2025 Old Burying Ground. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. Today we've got a brief update on the Old Burying Ground, including a bit of a request for a budget increase, and just some background on where we've been working on the last year. The Old Burying Ground is on Main Street. It's an amazing location, and I think, you know, I've grown up in Wolfville. I've seen and experienced this place over many decades now, and it feels like quite a privilege to be involved in working in this really amazing historic cemetery. So I thank you all for the opportunity. The Old Burying Ground dates back to 1763. This is the oldest cemetery in Wolfville for sure. Predates Wolfville's incorporation by 120 something years. It is really important heritage property in Wolfville, and it is designated as such. It's designated as both a municipal heritage property and a provincial heritage property. So that means that we both need to work within the confines of the heritage designations, but that's including the municipal and provincial level. So we do need to coordinate with the province on a number of changes in here. And we've been doing that. We've met with the provincial heritage property program coordinator and project special places coordinator as well. So we've met with both of those on site just earlier this summer and talked about a number of issues and a number of opportunities as well. The site, I'm sure everyone's familiar with, but it includes this sort of stone wall along Main Street. That's one of the character defining elements in the heritage designation. And then it's fenced along the west side where it abuts the theater festival, and the north boundary as well, where it abuts the curling club parking lot. And that fencing is part of what we're hoping to replace. It's currently really falling apart, and it's currently the worst condition back by the curling club. But it's all tangled up with a number of some invasive species and a number of other vegetative entanglements. So it's fenced on those two sides, and then it abuts the kind of curling club, the Troy restaurant, and Clock Park on the east side. And I would acknowledge a great gate has been added there in recent years. So Clock Park and the cemetery are actually connected with a small walking path there. The opportunity of this location, though, is really, it's pretty significant. I think it's a beautiful shaded location. You don't have to be a heritage enthusiast to enjoy this place. It is a public space that all are welcome in with reasonable respect, of course. But it is a great shaded green space in our downtown. And I think that it could be a real destination beyond just the heritage aspect. It's also home to some really large native tree species as well. So some of the current challenges that we face in here, there's, like I say, there's deteriorating fencing. There are some invasive species in here, buckthorn and Norway maple among many others, but those are the kind of prominent ones. There are some remnant tree stumps as well. There are broken headstones. There are grimy headstones that need cleaning and other restoration applied there. We have currently working with an individual who has some relatives in the northeastern portion here who wants to restore some of his family headstones. So we're working closely with them on that. It's a public space that feels a bit closed. We've heard that from many people. It feels like it's a little bit privileged access, which we would maybe find a middle ground here. We don't want it to be abused, but we also want it to feel a bit more open. It is a public space, and it's available for everyone. And there's some opportunity here for interpretive signage. There is one nice interpretive sign in there, but there are plot signs that have really deteriorated, and there's no formal pathway system in here either. So it's from an accessibility perspective, it's kind of a missed opportunity. If you're in a wheelchair or mobility device, it would be difficult to navigate this landscape as it is now. And it is a town-owned asset, and we would like to see better accessibility as well. This is just an example. Councillor Elliott identified this stone last year, and we were able to, right it. It had fallen over and grown over with grass. And this is just an example of one of many stones that oftentimes we can repair them by just tipping them back up. Other times they break and they need a professional masonry expert. So it's a lot of maintenance in here, and we do hope to kind of formalize some kind of group to take some ownership of that kind of headstone ownership, headstone restoration and cleaning, as that is a big task that town staff do not currently have a whole lot of capacity for doing. So we are excited to hear from family members who want to take some cleaning opportunity there. So we're working closely with them on selection of cleaning agents that are appropriate. So the old burying ground, just to sort of step back, I mean, from a planning perspective, it's a great site. There's lots of things we could do internally. But I think as planners, we often look at this in the context of the larger community and where this site is located right in our downtown. It has a lot of potential connections. And this view from Elm Avenue, it highlights one of those. And the back of the old burying ground actually empties into the Curling Club parking lot, which is essentially the farmer's market entrance. So if there were a path formalized, it could have a thoroughfare north-south connection, which could give access from both the back and the front, and east and west too. The west boundary currently doesn't have an access point, but the east has an access point from Clock Park. So we can see this as a bit of a destination where people would go and visit, but it could also be a bit of a shortcut or a bit of both, I think. So there's lots of connections that could work here: Farmers Market, Curling Club, and so on. So this is just highlighting kind of where that is in context. So behind the Curling Club would be sort of right up here. So we could see if we did create a formal pathway through here, we could see some kind of north-south connection, as well as a bit of an east and west connection flowing from the Theatre Festival parking lot over to Clock Park, for example. So there are opportunities for more pedestrian flow and other pedestrian and route connections. And this is just highlighting some of those destinations: the Curling Club, the Farmers Market, Charts Cafe. Everything that we all know is within that proximity, within that area. There's a lot happening there. It's interesting that this aligns quite well with the Highland Avenue crosswalk and the Highland Avenue active transportation route. And so it's been explored that it's possible we could have an extension of the AT route that passed through this cemetery, maybe with some barriers or some signage or some controlled access to ensure that people aren't speeding through here. But conceptually, we've been exploring that as an AT network, an element of the AT network. But I think what I want to highlight today is that that decision is not what we're asking for today. We're not prepared to make that determination yet. We do need an archaeological assessment to really guide that work. So whether there's an internal pedestrian network of just gravel paths that slowly take you around the cemetery, or there's a more formal through trail, that's a decision point for perhaps next year. That's what we've come to. So we're not looking to do any trail work this year. Just want to highlight that. There are opportunities, there are pros and cons to these decisions, but we do see some pedestrian network opportunities here. However, there is an archaeological assessment needed to move forward with any kind of path network, whether it's a part of the AT trail system or it's just an internal walking path. Either way, there's excavation and ground disturbance that will be impacting here. So the provincial staff from Special Places control the Cemeteries Act. And this is a particular importance to this location because some of the burials in here are likely shallower than what we would do in modern cemeteries. So any ground disturbance here has a real potential to actually reveal human remains or other kind of artifacts. So it's really critical that an archaeologist is on site when we do any kind of excavation, any digging, to monitor for that and deal with it appropriately if it is encountered. So any work that exposes the ground, that includes digging, excavating for whether it's a concrete path or it's a gravel path, either way. We put the brakes on that path work until we get this archaeological resource impact assessment, which is called an area. This is a standard kind of assessment that's done for many archaeological sites around the province. And we've engaged Jonathan Fowler, who is a well-known archaeologist. He works at St. Mary's University, but has done work in the cemetery already. He's done some ground LiDAR work, which essentially does some underground imaging to try to verify depths of burials and other underground infrastructure or other ground resources. So Jonathan Fowler is interested and willing to engage in that work. We do hope to start that this fall. And the goal of that kind of assessment would be to assess any significant resources, their distribution within the space, and that may guide where a path goes, if a path goes anywhere, and other mitigation sort of strategies. So that could be routing the path in a particular way. That could be locating signage or seating in a particular location, not here, but maybe over there. And it might make recommendations for other site protections and suitability for this kind of network. I think some of the conversations we've had to date with folks in the community, councillors alike, have been some hesitation to have, e-bikes. We could imagine e-bikes ripping through here at a high speed if we did an AT network. So there's a balance here. We've talked about signage that forces a slower speed, maybe as one barrier. Physical barriers could be another option. And so the archaeological assessment may not get to that level of detail, but it'll provide us with some recommendations and some guidance on how to respectfully, improve this space, whether that's internal circulation paths or something larger. This will help us make that decision. So that work is pending. We hope to engage Jonathan Fowler this fall. But one thing that we can do, and we've worked with the province carefully on this and our fence contractors, Eastern Fence, on installation methods. And one thing that we can do before that archaeological assessment is replace the fencing. And if you've seen from the curling club backlot, the fence is really poorly maintained. It's broken, it's falling apart back there. Certainly along the western boundary, it's also not in great shape. And you can see this in the top image. It's kind of waving all over the place and sagging, and it's deteriorated and it's old. So what we want to try to do is replace that, not just for the aesthetic value of getting rid of an old chain link fence, but also trying to mimic the character defining elements of the front gate, which is a classic iron gate with through pickets. And so we've come up with this kind of design similar to what you're seeing in that lower image. With two top rails and through pickets. This can be done because the existing fence would be cut flush with the ground, so and then just pulled from the surface, so no ground disturbance would be expected there. And then the installation of the new fence is simply posts being driven straight into the ground. And so the province is not concerned with that because there's not large underground masses being pulled up. So that installation method, I guess, is suitable to do before we have this archaeological resource impact assessment. And so that's what we'd like to achieve. We'd like to kind of move forward with a fencing replacement this year, giving some indication to the public as well that, look, this is the space that we are taking seriously. We, the town, would like to see more investment in here, more to come. And we hope that this assessment will give us the justification for whatever decisions do come with regards to paths and other infrastructure in the park. So that's just an example of the fencing. Next steps, I think what I'm here for today is just to discuss budget, because the council had budgeted $50,000 for this space this year. The fencing itself is likely to be a bit over that, almost 58,000. That's including tax. That's including the removal of the old fence, installation of the new fence is about $58,000. And we'd also like to engage Jonathan Fowler, and his estimate is around $10,000, depending on the scope of his assessment, which would be around $12,000 including tax. And that gives us a bit of buffer room if any of those, either of those, increase slightly. So what we're looking for is an increase of a budget amount from the sort of capital side. And following this sort of staff assessment, I just want to clarify that the archaeological assessment would give us more information and be able to plan for the future budgeting from 2026 and beyond. So again, no path work this year, but what we can do this year is deal with the fence and begin the work on the archaeology side. So to that effect, what we're looking for is to increase the budget from $50,000 to $75,000. That would enable us to install the new fence and start that archaeological work with Jonathan Fowler. So with that, I'll pass it back to the chair and available for any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Open it up to council if they have any questions or comments. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'd asked a question previously that I got an answer to, but it's just spawned like 4 more questions now that I'm sitting here looking at it. With a new fence from Main Street back to the theater festival, there is an north, south, east, west, but there's no entrance. You're planning an entrance on the west end with the new fence, regardless of if there could be a trail there, or it's almost like cart before the horse. So if there's an entrance there, but you actually can't put a path there, the entrance is kind of useless.
That's right. So what the fence, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And through your chair to the councillor, what we've priced includes a gate,
Okay.
an opening and a gate there. That opening and gate can be converted between a gate or solid fencing fairly easily. What we want to do is put the gate in while we're doing it.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason we end up in a situation where we can't possibly allow that gate to be there, it can be swapped back to a solid section of fencing fairly straightforward.
Okay. It makes sense in my head that a gate be there regardless of whether there's a path, because it could be used by town staff for maintenance, and it's just another entrance in. A follow-up question to that, if I may, is the east end entrance, being an actor on the Ghost Walks, is not accessible at all. Will that upgrade happen at the same time as some of this assessment, or it's actually a very dangerous entrance? It's a beautiful gate entrance that people just want to go through, but the minute it's just jagged stone, if I'm all the way down to a couple of headstones that you trip over too. So it's a beautiful gate, but it really, will that upgrade be factored into, because it's not, there's no accessible entrance, because even the front, it's heavy. And you cannot get through there. So if with assistance, you might be able to, but will those upgrades be made since this is happening?
Yeah, a good question through your chair. I think you're right. That eastern entrance where the Clock Park meets the old burying ground, there are 2 or 3 steps down, and it is not an easy walk for anyone. Certainly not rollable, especially in the dark. So yeah, we can certainly look at that. That would be part of the path network that we could discuss in next year's budget. Absolutely.
That was it. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I had a question. Do we know that the current boundaries for the cemetery are the original boundaries? So could there be graves outside that area?
Great question. And no, we don't know that. And in fact, the province, I forget the exact number, but they give quite a generous buffer around that. That is to say, all of Theatre Festival's parking lot, for example, could have burials under it. Some of Clock Park even may. So they provide a buffer. I think it's I forget 10 or 20 meters or something. It's something significant around the site, and in every cemetery. So not just that one. So yeah, I mean, we're fairly confident on the land that we own and where we can put a fence. But does that mean that underground infrastructure or underground burials or resources end that line? Not necessarily. Part of the assessment will highlight that.
Mayor McKay?
Thank you. Yeah, so I have the same, I think I had some of the same concerns that Councillor Butler had. The front gate, while beautiful, is not accessible. I went in on Friday and I could barely get the gate open myself. Well, I got in, I almost didn't get out. And I was like, oh, this isn't really that much fun. But the space in there is quite stunning. So it would be lovely to use it in a peaceful way. I think I'd like to see more information come back about a pathway through that, because I'm not 100% sure about that, and putting speed bumps in. I'm not sure that makes it peaceful or accessible. So, you know, I think the space deserves some respect for what it is. But the fence itself is beautiful. And if it has accessible entrances, that would be great. I think it is a beautiful space. It was quite peaceful walking through there on Friday. So in favor of the fence for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Butler?
Sorry, I did have one other question. The current gate and fence that are there, when were those replaced? How old are those? Do you know? I can't remember when that was put in. Okay.
Previous plan.
Well, I think I was just getting here that.
Okay. All right.
15, 17.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Brent? Oh, I thought I saw your light on. No, sorry. It's the sun. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, a sort of follow-up question. On the west side of the cemetery, there's an asphalt path that goes along between the cemetery and the parking lot for the Festival Theatre. What happens to that path at the north end? Is there any possibility of an access from that path, admittedly it's presumably on university land, into the car park for the Conan Bank?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Great question. It's tight, and what happens now is that path curves in front of the theater festival and then down the side alley. So currently the town's fence goes pretty much hard up to the side of the theater festival. But it's a great suggestion. We could look at that through the archaeological assessment as an opportunity. Currently, that back corner is where there may be some infrastructure there. I think the heat pumps might be there for the building, but miscellaneous stones have actually been piled up back there too. So it's not a pretty corner of the site, but it could be a simpler solution to have a straight shot. So we could look at that through the archaeological assessment. That's a good suggestion.
Mayor, I have one more question. Mayor McKay has a question, and I also have a question. I'll just go around to check for everybody before I put the motion on.
So I'm going to follow up to Councillor Williams' question then. So is that where we're going to start with an archaeo? Because that to me makes the most sense, is if our fence goes along that west side, and when I was walking through, that fence is in dire shape. And that path is already in existence, albeit on Acadia's property. I think it's, it's shared between community and Acadia. And we can get a path that goes from where it stops now and all the way back to the market. That would make great sense. And if there was an entrance into, and you could go to the market and have lunch at the burial ground, if we put benches or whatever in there, like if we may be, I was going to say, trying to think of the phraseology I was going to use about that one. That might make the most sense in terms of infrastructure and future investment, as opposed to a full path through the old burial ground. Even though we don't own it, I'm sure we do lots of things with Acadia that we lease land and all of that kind of stuff that we could maybe come up with something different. But do two really neat things instead of one thing.
All right, I just have a question, and I guess it's towards finance. We've already approved the 50,000, it's up to 75. I realize how much more the fence cost and the archaeological assessment, which needs to be done. I agree, they both need to be done. So if for some reason council didn't approve this, you don't even have enough money for the fence, what would exactly would the work that you would do? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think we would probably still engage in that archaeological assessment. We would have the funds to do that. And we could do some light landscaping, invasive removals, and some site clearing, but it really gets tricky when we've got stumps, like big tree stumps that have been sitting there for a long time. We'd like to grind those and level the ground in some locations, but yeah, there's a real risk of turning something up. So we wouldn't be able to do a lot of significant landscape work until we really know for sure what's going on here. We've got an archaeologist to monitor any excavations. We could begin the assessment though, I think is fair point.
All right, are there any more questions from council? Okay, I don't see any. Councillor Elliott, would you like to put the motion on the floor?
First of all, I want to say thank you for all your work on this file. And secondly, I would move that the Committee of the Whole forward the following motion to council for decision. The council approves the capital budget increase from 50,000 to 75,000 to install a new fence and begin the archaeological assessment that will inform future work within the old burying ground.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
I will second that.
Councillor Butler, thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Looks like we are on the last staff reports for discussion, RFD 032 2025, endorsement of inclusive employment initiatives. Welcome, Barb, back.
Thank you. Through the chair to council. This is fairly brief. So what I'm looking for today is your support around using the town's name and logo as an endorsement for a new inclusive employment program that is being overseen by L'Arche that will be supported through the Purposeful Group. So a number of months ago, a consultant from the Purposeful Group reached out to Mayor McKay. We had a lovely conversation about what this could look like. Without getting into all of the background, a lot of this has to do with offering individuals choice who historically have not been offered choice. So we think quite often about employment that we see in our community through L'Arche in workshop environments. And this really starts to treat individuals of that community in a way that would allow them some agency and some decision making. So what do they want to do for employment? And we're not talking about volunteer placements. This is actual paid employment. So this program would create carved employment opportunities, and carved was a new term for me. And that means basically creating a position within an organization that's really, really focused on the abilities and the strengths of an individual. So whereas our team might come and work 7-ish or more hours a day, a carved employment position might be just a few hours here and there based on what somebody is really interested in offering. So we had some great conversations. Some workshops have been hosted over at L'Arche. The WBDC is supporting this initiative. Jeremy Strong from the WBDC has some interesting history with similar initiatives out of the Ottawa area. So he's really bringing a lot of passion to this. And at this time, again, I'm looking to answer your questions and also seeking the endorsement. So again, the notion of basically, you know, when we think about how we are perceived by the community, leading by example. So supporting this initiative.
Thank you, Barb, for the presentation. Are there any questions from council to Barb or any comments? Mayor McKay?
I'd love to make a comment if I may. Yeah, I had the privilege of sitting in on the meeting with Ms. Lowthers and Barb, and it was really enlightening. Like I didn't quite understand all of the nuances of it as well, and I couldn't be more proud to put our logo on this type of initiative. I think it speaks volume about who we are, and I'm super impressed that the WBDC is involved in it as well. I just couldn't be more proud to put our logo on it. So I hope it will be supported by council.
Thank you. I agree with that statement. Thank you, Mayor McKay. Is there any more comments before the motion goes on the floor? No. Councillor Elliott, would you like to put the motion on the floor?
Thank you. As Chair of the Accessibility Committee, I'm very happy to make this motion that the Committee of the Whole forward the following motion to Council for decision, that Council endorse the Wolfville Inclusive Employment Program.
And can I have a seconder for that?
I will second that.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is carried unanimously also. Thank you, Barb. All right. What? No, I tell you. Okay, we're moving on to number 7. I'm looking at our CAO.
Thank you again, Chair. So I'll just bring council's attention to a number of the items that are featured in the CAO report. Right off the top, I'd like to share with council that the annual Terry Fox Run will be happening this year on September 14th, convening at the Lions Community Hall at 36 Elm Avenue on Sunday, September 14th from 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. So that's an open invitation to anybody on council, in the gallery, staff, or in the watching online to attend this year's Terry Fox Run. Later in September, September 30th, is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And so the day before that, the town of Wolfville will be doing what it can to acknowledge the 57th call to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission by holding a blanket exercise for all staff and council to participate in. So there'll be 2 opportunities, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So any council and staff who would like to participate in that blanket exercise is welcome to do so. Without getting into the details of what it is, I can tell you that I've participated in blanket exercise in the past. It is a enlightening and moving experience to get a better sense of the history, shared and separate, of our First Nations neighbors and community members. So I would highly encourage anybody who hasn't or who has to participate in that blanket exercise if they've got the opportunity. It's the 29th, yeah. On the community safety and compliance front, staff have been working to welcome Acadia students back to the community. I don't think I'm the only person who's noticed the vibrancy with which the students have come back to this community over the course of the last number of weeks. It's an absolutely magical time of year and adds to the pixie dust that we've been seeing many examples of here today. A successful session on campus was held with residents' assistance at the end of August, and the Acadia Harm Reduction Fair was also covered by our team. More recently, on Friday, and I believe earlier this week as well, door-to-door outreach was completed with our compliance staff and Acadia staff in the neighborhood areas near campus. This is an annual initiative to welcome students and provide helpful information focused on community expectations. I'll also add that planning for homecoming is also well underway. Moving now to fire services, the specific stats through May to August are in your report, but I'll just draw attention to one detail. From May 1st until August 19th, our firefighters have logged a total of 2,023 volunteer hours in service to our community. That's a combination of training and calls, but I'll also note that through the summer months, the regular training schedule goes down, just acknowledgement of vacations and whatnot. So through those months, that number would be a disproportionate representation of calls. And actually, our fire services were on the road both mornings this week, on Monday and Tuesday, in response to calls for service. Yes, yeah. On the finance and corporate services front, so as was already mentioned by the chair, we welcomed our new director of corporate services, Diana Gibson, who began in the role on August 5th. So we're very excited to have Diana in that role, and we're now in the process of filling her old position of manager of finance. So that applications to that position are open, I believe, until the end of the week. So if anybody is interested in that position, please take a look on our website. The finance team has been working on completing our year end and are on track to have our audited financial statements to first the audit committee and then the committee of the whole in October. On recreation, our rec hub has been opened in June. And I'd say it says here in the report that facilitated 900 bike loans through the end of August. I would say we're probably pretty close to honing in on 1,000 at this stage since the report was provided. So that the rec hub has been just a wild success over the course of the last number of months. Our recreation team also visited 7 neighborhood parks to host community cookouts throughout the summer. These, again, were a novel approach to our recreation services and were met with lots of good input and good uptake was had. We figure total attendance was about 500 guests across the 7 cookouts that were held in primarily in July. And then finally, on the recreation side, the West End Park is on schedule for fall completion with playground installation, tree planting, landscaping, and irrigation later this fall. So things are falling into place there. On GIS and asset management, we continue to update and deploy GIS tools throughout the town. There's a list in your packages to some of the new and improved ways that we're deploying GIS. So I invite you to take a look at that. In addition, we're continuing to work with the AIM network, so it's the Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network, on a proposal to update our asset management plan and a process for continuous improvement. And that updated plan, the backbone of that is a lot of the work that we're doing with our GIS work in-house. On planning and building, 52 building inspections, site visits, and consultations have taken place since earlier in July. Site plan approval has been provided for developments on Front Street, Gasbro Avenue, and Highland Avenue. And I'm going to take a moment to highlight some of the work that's been done through Public Works and Parks over the last number of months as well. The summer months have been busy for everybody in combination of trying to take in some vacations and fill some positions that need to be filled. But I'll just highlight a few things that Public Works managed to shoehorn in with all of the work that's going on. Right now, we're working on identifying needs for the 26 capital budget. But work that has occurred over the course of the last couple of months includes resurfacing asphalt on Hillside Avenue and Grandview Drive, repairing catch basins across the town, continuing our in-house asphalt patching with our recycler. The Al Whittle sidewalk replacement and stormwater work is ongoing, but it's very close to completion. And if anybody has an opportunity just to wander up Main Street and see the difference in the sidewalk for accessibility, but also we have to remember the main purpose of that project was actually stormwater, to try to get rid of that perpetual puddle pooling that occurred in the middle of the sidewalk there. What we see there now is such a massive improvement from what was there before, and sincere thanks to the contractors and our Public Works staff for making that happen. There's been ongoing project management of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So we're going to bring a little bit more information on the wastewater treatment plant upgrades in a future meeting. But needless to say, a significant amount of work is going on out there right now to see that third lagoon put in place. 35 more water meters have been upgraded throughout the town. Our yearly lift station inspections have been completed, and we're planning for capital budget upgrades. Going back to the sewer treatment plant, we completed UV light and sleeve replacement at the wastewater treatment plant as well. And staff have been working closely with CBCL to monitor our water levels and usage during recent drought conditions. More discussion on that particular topic will occur at the Source Water Committee a little bit later this week. On the HR front, similar to in corporate services, we're on the look for a manager of environmental services as well in public works. So that ad has been out for a couple of weeks now. It'll be out for a few more, but we're still in process of searching for a manager of environmental services. Into parks, project management of the washroom and change facility at Reservoir Park is ongoing, with project completion anticipated for mid to late September. I took a wander up there yesterday to see the progress on that addition to Reservoir Park. And again, I invite you to go take a look. The difference that facility is going to make in Reservoir Park is just incredible. Large area for shade, accessible changing and washroom facilities right on the edge of the ponds. So it's going to make a big difference in the usability of that park. Picnic tables have been added to Waterfront Park and Woodman Grove, and way stations have been added to the corner of Highland and Skyway. So lots of activity through the summer months. Week before last, our AT coach from Mobicon was in town, and our Director Lake took him on a whirlwind tour of the town to get more familiarity as we bring forward some more specific recommendations for improvements to our AT network across town, which we brought to Committee of the Whole at a future date. Wrapping up the report, we've got some additional information on where things stand with the Housing Accelerator Fund. Additional conversation on that will take place later this week again at Planning Advisory Committee. But just wish to note one specific update on that, as we have now scheduled our another round of community engagement, which will take place on October 29th and 30th at the Legion. And so those will be afternoon and evening sessions on Housing Accelerator Fund and MPS implementation. Can't turn the page. And that is the end of what I'll draw your attention to in the report. But as I said, I'd invite council to take a look at the details of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
I'll open that up to council. I see Councillor Williams.
Yes, it's about irrigation, which was in the report. And it struck me that during a time when there is a voluntary restriction on homeowners for their water use, that the council should show solidarity and also reduce or remove any irrigation, especially of grass in town.
You're referring to the town corporate. So we did our utmost to follow our own advice and lead by example by doing irrigation and watering of plants, fields earlier in the morning. There were a couple of examples where our systems are a little bit more complicated to adjust, where I know that did not occur, specifically, I believe, on Tower Field. But for the most part, what we asked the public to do was to limit watering of grass and plants and flowers to the early morning hours or overnight. And we endeavored to lead by example on that.
As someone who has some irrigation experience professionally, I know that it really doesn't make much difference whether you water at night or whether you water during the day.
Okay.
So therefore, I feel that the town is not showing solidarity with its constituents.
Thank you. CEO, I want to be mindful that the amount of use that the parks use in comparison to our own individual properties are quite a bit different. So, I appreciate your comment, but I also know that many people are many more people are using our parks than they are using our properties. And, you know, I mindful of the fire situation, and if that was so dry and somebody came along here. So we're all mindful. I appreciate the CEO's comments, and I also appreciate yours. Because sometimes we do think, you know, we have to follow our own. I think everyone on council is following what has been set up. So CAO, I do know that some of them are on timers, and can you just reiterate what time of year that usually the waters sprinklers actually are on timers and when they're not? Do they come off in September at some point?
I believe so. Specifically when in September, unless I'm looking to you, Devin, if you have a better idea, but specifically when in September they come off timer, I'm not sure, but they do.
Thank you for that comment, and thank you, CAO. Are there any questions? Oh, yeah, Councillor Palmer.
I just want to make a point, man, I gotta tell you, I was my trepidation about how challenging it was going to be in front of the theater festival. I was wondering how that went, and I must say that went about as good as it could possibly go.
Do you mean the Willow?
The sidewalk.
Yeah.
And good job, everybody. I mean, I could just see that the wheels fallen off of that baby, and that did not. And
Yeah.
good job for the contractor. Good job for the boys in Public Works. Thank you.
If I can, Chair, I'll just take a moment to celebrate some of our fantastic folks. So the contractors did a fantastic job, of course. But in addition to that, on staff here, our Senior Manager of Operations, Dawson Sheehy, kicked things off with some fantastic communication with the affected property owners, specifically the Al Whittle Theatre, and then followed that up with the contractors as well. Dawson took some well-needed vacation in the middle of that project as well, and handed the baton off to Chris Cheeseman, who continued with that fantastic ability to manage that project. And as you'd said, given the traffic, given the centrality of that location, given what was found in the underground, which is significantly more than anybody expected, that project had every opportunity to fall off the rails, and both the contractors and our staff did a fantastic job.
I will concur. Councillor Van Niekerk and I walked by there this morning. It looked pretty good. It almost looked like it was complete, didn't it?
Yes,
We're-
just as I was coming up to it, the person who was working on it pulled the pylon away and kind of said, "Here, go ahead, run on the concrete." And it was
So there you hear it. Councillor Van Niekerk got the first walk by without any, yes, so they knew we were out there this morning. Thank you. Is there a question that you have, Councillor Reed?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. I just want to say thank you so much to Parks and Rec for just a wonderful summer of festivities, and also calling out the camps that you put on. It was the first year we took part in those, and there was just some really positive experiences and feedback from my son, and so that was great. He's happy, I'm happy. And I just had a question about for the Terry Fox run, because I know normally that takes place on the trail. So I was just wondering if they had special permission to run on the trail, or if not, are they running on the road? And would there be road closures as a result of that race happening? Or what is the plan?
Thank you for those questions. Through the chair to the councillor. So the event is organized by our extraordinary community volunteer, Richard Collicutt. So Richard's plan was to use the Harvest Moon Trail. About a month ago, we anticipated that with the closures and no rain in sight, we might need to come up with another plan. So the event kicks off at the Lions Club location, and then walkers or runners, however you were choosing to move through this experience, will be going around the neighborhood. So on sidewalks, not on the road. We will not have road closures for this. And all the details can now be found on our website.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just had another question too, if that's okay. Oh yeah, where is the blanket exercise taking place?
Just next door in the fire hall.
In the fire, okay.
Inside the fire hall, yeah. It's in is it in the training room? Yeah.
And is Reservoir Pond reopened now? Is the water clear?
TBD. Discussion is forthcoming on Reservoir Pond immediately after the committee of the whole meeting.
So still closed. as of-
Still closed as of right this moment.
Okay. And what's the estimated completion time for the water treatment plant out there? They thought that it was supposed to kind of be wrapping up around September-ish. No?
No, it'll be wrapping up, I believe at this stage, we're looking at March.
March. So is the
Yeah.
plant, will that truck traffic continue through March?
We're hoping to finish up the heavy truck traffic. Once we figure out
So that's gonna be like more imminent, the truck traffic ending, or?
We'll bring back a final on that. We're still.
Okay. All right. TBD on that. That was it. Thank you.
Mayor McKay? Mayor McKay?
Thank you. I just have one question. For the last couple of years, we have not had an update from the Acadia camps, and I'm wondering if we can have that. I think we were supposed to get one last year, and I don't think it happened. So maybe we can get an update on what those camps are running at, if they're full, and there's been some changes there too. So just curious about those.
Yep, we can follow that up.
Thank you. Any more questions? I just have a question because I do get asked this a lot and it is about the washroom. So you have an underway finding. So the new signage for the rec hub where the washrooms are, Reservoir Park, Railtown, Wolfville Library. What about Devour? Like, is there going to be signs on that? And is that like, people don't know about that, but they are very accessible washrooms. That is what we gave money for them to be. That should be included on somewhere. They should be available.
We can take that back. They are available. We can take that back. Yeah.
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 All right. I think we're finished on that. So we'll move on to number 8, committee reports. At Equity and Anti-Racism Advisory Committee, I see we have a new acronym, ERAC.
Yes, we do.
Councillor Butler.
As submitted.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Move on.
Sorry, I
Oh,
just-
sorry.
When is the next meeting for that scheduled? Because in the minutes, it just said next meeting.
Oh, from this report, we did have another meeting since in August, we added an additional one and there wasn't quorum, so we couldn't have it then. So now it's on to the next date, which I believe is October 6th.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to REMAC, Regional Emergency Management Advisory Committee. I think that's just submitted by Dan. Are there any questions? He's not here. Okay, thank you. And then RCMP Advisory Committee, Councillor Butler.
As
again.
submitted.
Submitted. Any questions, Councillor Butler? Seeing none? No. Okay, we'll move on to that. External reports, committee reports. We have the Valley Regional Services. I'm sure who did that.
As submitted.
As submitted. Are there any questions to Mayor McKay? No, seeing none. Thank you. So number 10, we're moving on to request for agenda item. CEO Horn, would you like to set some parameters on this?
Well, thank you very much, Chair. Just where this is the first time that a request for agenda item has come forward during this council term, I'll just go over the associated procedure so everyone is clear on that. So the fireworks RFA has been received from Councillor Williams. It's in your package for review. The committee's job today is to determine if there is an appetite to discuss the topic and consider the recommendation at a future meeting. So there is no discussion of the actual topic here today, just whether or not the committee would like to discuss it at a future date. If the answer is yes, we'll schedule that. If the answer is no, it ends here today.
So this is slightly different. And as CEO Horn said, this is the first one of this council term. So before we used to discuss it. So today we are just asking council yes or no. As staff, we would have to send it back to staff to have a report. So yeah, if you agree yes, then we send it back to staff to have a report. If it's not, then it stops here. Is everyone clear on the parameters? Okay. So should I'm just looking to see.
However you'd like to go around the
Yeah,
table.
so just going around the table, Councillor Elliott. I'm just mine, or I'll go be last.
Okay, that's okay. So I'm only asking this question, so I don't know enough about this conversation. So I'm cognizant of the amount of work that this would go in, because this is not just about environmental. It would also mean a revamp of all of our programming for Parks and Rec. So if we did that, so I would like, if the answer is yes, what comes off the plate? And the CEO would have to answer that question, because our staff, we're short-staffed in at least 2 departments right now. What comes off the plate? Because that would be a decision point for me. So if this would trump something else off your plate, I would need to know what that is.
So we want to have that question answered now before I pursue on, Mayor, or go around like, because that is a pertinent question for your yes or your no.
I can't say exactly what would come off the plate, but the mayor is correct. Something would. We're beyond full capacity at this particular stage, so we have to determine exactly what we would reallocate our resources to.
Councillor Butler.
Mayor McKay took the point right out of my head. In terms of when exactly we initiate fireworks, I believe it is just the one scheduled event a year, which is Mud Creek Days. It's 2. No.
It's just the one. It's just the one. Am I not correct?
That's
For the town put on.
That the town
puts on.
is just Mud
Yeah.
Creek Days.
Just Mud
correct?
Creek Days.
Okay, so Mud Creek Days is not happening again until next July. Thus, I feel this is important because I do get the odd question, but at this time, I don't think it needs to be a priority based on what staff is overwhelmed with at the moment. Because we're not going to be met with it again until our next Mud Creek Days, I think it could be moved forward substantially until a time when staff has the time to do it. So I am in favor of it, but it is certainly not a priority on my plate at the moment.
So sort of no then, am I correct? Sort of yes or no, or later?
Later.
Later.
Yeah. I don't think it needs to be a priority, but it is something I would be interested in hearing more about and having a discussion about.
Councillor Van Niekerk?
Yes, I am seeing vote as Councillor Butler, just maybe a later.
Okay. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, it was not my intent.
Oh, microphone, sir.
My intention is to get stuff pushed off the existing scope of work for the council. And yes, Councillor Butler is correct that it's really an issue for the summer. And so it could be pushed some distance. But
Okay.
yes, I do want to see it addressed.
Okay. So I guess I'm getting a few mixed things. I'm hearing that, sorry. Councillor Vaughn.
I just want to be clear, like fireworks are illegal in Wolfville, aren't they? Not other than sanctioned ones. Am I right in saying that?
Oh, there's turned off.
We're going to start talking about the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's, but we're not discussing that, right?
We're simply discussing the town's use of fireworks.
So I have gone around the table and asked everybody, not spoke. I have not spoken yet. I have not spoken yet. So I'm going to speak before and just because I have not spoken, and then we will decide. Mayor McKay said that she wanted the CEO Horn to come back and say what other things need to be done. So I'm well aware of what everybody around the council is saying. I just need to sum it up. So I do agree with Mayor McKay and Councillor Butler that it is once a year, and I am cognizant of how much work that staff has. And to put this on the table right now, I don't feel is necessarily fair. So to sum up, I'm hearing that there are definitive yeses. And then there are some people that are like, I think we maybe to do it later. So I'm looking at you, CEO Horn, for maybe some direction, and Mayor McKay also, to say, is this something we want to do later? Or Mayor, would you like to speak on what you've heard also?
CEO, and maybe you can disagree with me, that's fine. So if we're saying later, can this come back as a discussion as part of an operations plan for next year?
Yes.
Okay, so is that fair for everybody? Okay, so staff, CEO, you have the right direction on this?
Yep.
Okay,
So.
Okay, thank you. I saw nods going all around here, so the consensus is, if I, to make it clear, that we will discuss this at a later time. That's correct. Okay. All right, we're moving on to public input. I don't see anybody in the gallery, but I'm just checking with Laura to see if there's anybody online. Nope, there is no one online. So, can somebody make a motion to go in camera under section 22, 2E of the Municipal Governments Act? So we read that, Councillor Butler?
I would move that we adjourn to in-camera, that council move to an in-camera meeting under section 22(2)E of the Municipal Government Act for contract negotiations.
And a seconder? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are now in camera.